Yeah. Why not? It's cold enough. It's cold enough already. Let's add a cold open to the wintry feel. Good evening. Evening, Chris. Evening, Gary. Evening, John.
Evening. How are we?
I'm not too bad. Not too bad. I'm trying to warm myself up. Hence the sort of the thicker hat. This is my thickest of all hats. And yes, I'm ready to get motoring.
Is it?
All the
it
nerves
looks like
have gone long ago from the top of my head, mate. So I'm okay in the cold.
Is it below zero over there?
Not yet.
Oh,
It probably.
It's pressuring us for that.
Yeah. Speaking about pressure, Ian David Diaz, where are you? He's beaming in from another location, everybody. I think he's stuck in traffic. But yeah, he says he's going to be here. He's going to beam in at some point in the future. We've got people waiting already, which is always lovely to see. Not that we want to keep people waiting, of course we don't. But the cold open has become sort of traditional.
Well, you do know that Ian is the stunt man on Rebecca Gold as well. So he's probably jumping off a building right at this very moment, and he'll come smashing in through the glass.
That's right.
And then log on. Milk tray man.
He's doing the Sherlock stunt where he falls off the top of a building.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past him.
Yeah,
I wouldn't put it past him. Yes, so ready to get cracking, everybody. We're not so much of the sort of timey-wimey this time, looking at another series completely. The past, the present, and the future of another great genre name, or formerly great genre name. Strangely enough, though, there are people out there who seem to be capable of making decent Star Trek, so we're going to touch on some of that in the show. It's great to have the three of you on, and we're going to catch up on the rest of your weeks as well, and generally chew the fat with people out there in the live chat. I can't wait to get started, Chris, because it's been a couple of weeks. He's got the thumbs up, though. This must be a good sign.
Oh, hey. Oh, yeah, Frank's back this week.
Hiya, Frank. Yes, so I'm ready to get started. If you are, we've got comments all ready to get to. Should we have a look at these? Oh, there's some hellos and some highs and things like that. Hail, everyone, says Lord Thoth. We've got Gary judging himself up there with a comment, dropping him Darren M's in too. I'm glad you're there, Darren. Hail and howdy, folks. So says here. We've got to from you too, John. So I think this is the this is the indicator that we've got to get going. So I think to start off this special show, we shouldn't really let us introduce it. We should pass it over to him.
Keeping money in a savings account where it earns interest is logical. Keeping money in a checking account for convenience is also logical. But it's fascinating when you combine interest and convenience in Atlantic Bank's Interest Plus Checking, the account that draws 5% interest compounded daily on the same money you're using to write checks. How is it done? Ask your Atlantic banker.
No, Atlantic banker isn't Cockney rhyming slang that I know of, although it could be, I suppose. Welcome back to the Spacebook, talking all out there entertainment and live streaming it to you on YouTube and on Rumble too, direct this time, not from here, but from the final frontier here on our 100% real-time live stream on Saturday, the 30th of November, 2024. It's a little bit chilly in Birmingham. I'm Dan Hadley, Birmingham's king of the geeks, and we're boldly going where we've been before, but not for a good old while. Yeah, I think it's been 18 months since we've spoken any kind of Star Trek at all, mainly because they never really make any good Star Trek worth commenting about. I know, travesty. How can I say these things? Gary Akers. Oh, welcome back, guys. I've got John Yulden, I've got Gary Akers, and we've got Bolstrek and Frank too, and we've got, I think, a couple of people are going to beam in later on as well. So there's so much that we could get stuck into. But yeah, it's been a couple of weeks, Chris. How have you been?
I'll do my Shatner hands. That's my Shatner hands. Why? Why, Spock? Why? Oh. There you go.
Here we are again. So yeah, here we are. We complained about the cold, Chris, but it's an occupational hazard for you, isn't it? You're quite used to it.
Well, we get used to it. Yeah, it's we had a protracted summer, so it was still summertime in like early November. Then, like a beast out of hell, winter comes, and so now it's frozen. But I do have studded winter tires now, so that's fun. It's like literally, I don't know if you have those in the UK, but they're fun because I had all-wheel drive for 5 years.
Yeah.
And I got back to front-wheel drive because the prices of cars over here are, I can't say the bad words because they'll be bad words. And put up a grumpy video yesterday. That was fun. Nobody's
I've not
watching it
seen
because
that.
I've been shadow banned into oblivion, but that's okay. I kind of expect that.
have to get
So
on
yeah,
that.
that's me. So it's cold. Yeah.
Very
so
cool.
hi, everybody.
You can get those tyres in Britain, but we've just got very little use for them, really.
I know a lot of
you
places
know,
are actually illegal because they damage the road. But when you live in basically the Arctic, it's either that or death. And I did get to try them out in a blizzard, and it wasn't quite like my all-wheel drive where I used to have fun with that. Here, it's like just don't get stuck. But it did make it through snowbanks, so yeah. But I do miss my fancy car, but I don't miss the basically. If you buy a car in North America or especially Canada, unless it's like what I have right now, which is like a base model four banger. Actually, they pretty much all are now. But if you want to get an all-wheel drive, even like a basic one, you're looking at like $60,000. If you want to get a truck, that's close to $100,000 now. Cars here suck. So as I'm driving my little car where I hope it doesn't get stuck, I'm like, well, yeah, at least I didn't take out a mortgage to buy a car like some people I know.
I mean, the thing is, Chris, even when it gets really bad here, and John, you'll probably co-sign on this one, even when it gets really bad here, you know, we could buy fancy tyres for the weather and things, but as soon as we get any snow in Britain now above, say, 3/4 of an inch, the entire country just sort of closes down. Everything shuts down and closes.
We don't have that in here, dude. We just keep going. It's like you get used to it.
We used to when I was a
chaos.
kid.
It's chaos here. Like you got people rolling down the road when there's a little snowflake on the car, and it's like we're all gonna die.
Well, that's what happens over here. Like in California, whenever it starts to drizzle, all the news stations say we're on storm watch. It's like
Storm
it's drizzling.
watch.
It's drizzling.
Yeah.
It's like no, storm watch is what we have here, where you get up in the morning. You've got an imprint from the snow when you open your front door, which is up to your waist. Then you go out in this crap. Then you think you know where your car is, so you look for the little hump in the snow. So then you basically give yourself a half heart attack digging everything out. Then you go on the roads and hope you don't die. Usually it's watching cars flying one way or the other. And then you get there and you hope you don't get stuck. You go in, you slip, then you come outside and everything's frozen and you're like walking on ice. Then it gets a little bit hot. Then it gets slushy. Then the slush freezes. Then you get more snow on top of the slush. So you've got, not only do you have deep snow, but you've got like black ice right under the snow. So you don't know if you're gonna. That's a normal day for us. We just
say what you will about Canada's PM. He's no dummy. He went down to Florida. He's in Florida right now, meeting with my new leader. It's like
because your leader
praise, the great one.
Yeah.
I know we don't do politics, so I'll just explain what's
no.
going
I was
on
just
here.
bringing that up because he
we do.
swam from the
We don't, but we do.
Oh no, you got it. You guys will enjoy this. Okay, so as you know, my country has become a dumpster fire unlike anything the world has ever seen, and our dumpster fire is affecting the U.S. So there are basically, if you do should I say DRUGS, so I don't get Dan in trouble, the bad things. So all the bad things are allowed here. They don't prosecute. Vancouver is literally legalized everything. So problem number one is, this is all coming because our border is largely unprotected. You could just walk through a field and you get in the U.S. So all this stuff, which is, basically legal because they don't police it anymore, is coming down to the U.S. So the fentanyl and everything else is basically ending Americans. So that's the other issue. The other one is, with the, how shall I say this, newcomers coming in who are not vetted. It used to be the country to the south of the U.S. that was the problem. Oh, no, now it's us because they're coming through our country. I think there's, in a country of 40 million, there's 4.5 million who technically should not be here right now. So they're coming into the U.S. and doing bad things. So Trump is mad about this. So for the first time in his life ever, somebody held our PM's feet to the fire. So if
Right.
he doesn't do something about the bad D things coming over, and if he doesn't do something about the borders, because literally Canada's it's pretty much a bigger problem than Mexico right now because we don't have a wall because it's Canada. So
I never thought to put one along the top, along the
we
bottom.
didn't have this problem until recently. So what Trump is going to do if Trudeau doesn't fix both these problems when he comes into office? 25% tariff on all Canadian goods coming to the U.S., which will destroy our economy.
Oh my,
now,
that's yeah.
And Trudeau, obviously, these are the people visiting our country. He cares about those more than he does his own citizens.
Yes, we've got one like that, mate.
And people that do the D things are basically protected citizens as well as the people that provide this. So he doesn't want to destroy that industry. It's like, well, we're holding up, we're pulling up our sleeves for Canadians. No, you aren't. So there's an election coming. Right now it's like we need to get this government out because our country is going to be decimated if we won't. Whereas Pierre Poilievre, who is almost certain to become our next prime minister, and the Liberals will be lucky if they have 2 members left at this point. So he will do all this and he will block it. Like he's basically our version of Trump. If you've ever seen him online, he's like the opposite of Trudeau in every way possible. So he's going to resolve this. But the problem is our mandatory election does not happen until next October. Trump takes office on January 20th. Even though the Liberals in our country have a minority, they're being held up by the new Democratic Party, who basically it's a coalition. And the only reason that they're holding up the Liberals is their leader, a guy by the name of Jagmeet Singh, doesn't become eligible for his pension until April, and he's going to get kicked out. There's no way he's staying in there. So basically, our country is being ruined. So this dude can get his pension in April because then he will have been in our disaster of a parliament for 10 years. Then after that, he doesn't care. But then we have the election. So by this point, Canadian industry is going to be done, like just screwed beyond screwed because the U.S. most of our imports go to the U.S. and they're not going to pay 25%. So basically, our economy is going to faceplant completely next spring. And I do not blame Trump.
Really?
I understand exactly where he's coming from because we are dealing with the same things.
It's
So,
Chris, a version, a remix of that is going to happen here.
Yep. And that's my rant for the day. And I said, see, who was it who brought this up? So I didn't start this. Somebody, Barry, who did this?
All I mentioned was your guy fled to the tropics of Florida, so he didn't have to freeze like you're having to.
He went to Mar-a-Lago yesterday.
That's right, to bend the knee.
He's not going to do what Trump wants because that's
you couldn't write
his own ideology. So he's literally like a child because he basically is a child. So what my prime minister is doing, Justin the Fearless, is that went to Mar-a-Lago, paid a surprise visit to Trump yesterday, and as far as I can tell, started crying, saying, "Please don't put these tariffs."
That's
right. Are you going to do something about the stuff? And he's like, "Well, no. We've got to be, sympathetic to these people." Oh, so you want to be sympathetic to criminals? Yeah. I'm just. Oh, hello, Ian. Welcome here. Sorry, you walked into a rant. I'm going to shut up now. I did a video yesterday. That's why I'm in this.
I've just got this image of you, Chris, like on the border, like John McClane in Die Hard 2 in the snow, just stopping all these people trying to illegally cross the border.
Chris is like George Lucas in this. He gets his bullhorn and just plants himself at the border yelling at people.
Well, look, you get it all off your chest, my friend. That's what we're here for. That's why you come to your mates, to have a good old rant. I just hope that some of it is sorted out in time for Christmas there, and you can enjoy a few Christmas movies. It's still a few weeks away, obviously, and we're going to be together here on the Spacebook Live and talk about something. We may have decided on it. Well, we may change our minds, but we may have decided on it. Stay tuned for all of that. Make sure you are notified, and I have been notified that yes, our errant mega geek has transported in. Thankfully, he may be midway through his evening meal if Deliveroo have blessed him. But we'll have to wait and see when we bring on Ian David Diaz back on the panel.
I'm back.
There he is.
He's back.
Hey!
He's back. Good to see you, mate.
Shit. Yeah, that's good.
The man in black.
Oh,
hey,
it's
you were
Chip-
right.
it's
He is the
Chip's
milk tray
man.
bloke. He's all in black.
There's some lady right now with a little business card lying next to her
That's
bed.
right.
You know,
That's right. Yeah, she's over there. Shut up.
Been serviced. Pull your finger out, love, and get me breakfast. You're all right, mate.
And
Yeah.
at that moment, we get demonetized.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised,
right.
mate. Would not be surprised.
I'm glad you're here because before we get stuck into the meat of the conversation, I thought that you would be very happy to have seen this very first picture from Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein movie that's due out next year, Ian. Check this out. Look how opulent this is. I know you're a bit of a fan of some of his stuff.
Yeah, wow, looks great.
Kind of.
That reminds me of the window in Star Wars, but hey, such is life. Doesn't it? Yeah, it does look
Or the
a bit
one in
like-
the one in the Rise of the Planet of the Apes that's in the loft.
Yeah, it looks good. So
Yeah.
is he playing the monster then?
Guillermo del Toro himself. I don't know.
Not him. Who's playing the monster?
Oh, don't ask me complicated questions like that.
right,
I can't quite remember, but I can sort of keep you talking while I look it up. I think it was. It can't be Benedict Cumberbatch, can it?
Because he
can't be.
plays it on stage, doesn't he? He plays the monster on stage, so it might be him. I know that he has a successful run playing the monster on stage. So yeah.
Okay, so this stars Oscar Isaac as Victor Frankenstein and somebody called Jacob Elordi as Frankenstein's monster. Mia Goth's also in the film, along with Christopher Waltz. David Bradley's in there too, the War Doctor himself, along with Charles Dance and Lars Mikkelsen. So wow, this is a cast and a half. He's been planning on making this movie for nearly 18 years. It's something he's previously said that he would kill to make, and he's got a script by Frank Darabont in there too. So this could be something special.
Looks good though. Just a nice shot, isn't it?
It is. I know this is the kind, because we've talked about Del Toro's stuff before, and obviously he was originally lined up to do the Hobbit trilogy, wasn't he? Which I think the fact that he didn't do it is probably, as much as I love Peter Jackson, Del Toro probably should have made those movies and whittled them down to two. But this passion project of his, I can't remember the last film I saw by Del Toro. It was probably The Shape of Water.
Yeah, same.
He seems to have been biding his time with this one, and this picture. I don't know. It just looks. Obviously, you can see the rig. You can see, all that sort of stuff in there. But the production design, obviously, it's very distinctively him, Gary. Where do you stand on his movies?
Yeah, I mean, I know. I mean, he's a visionary, and there's not too many of them left, and he doesn't repeat himself. It always seems like he's going for like a different aesthetic each time. I saw that Scorpio thing there, and I thought, well, is that like Frankenstein's cross trainer machine or something, and that's the logo on it or something? I hope that this is true to the original Mary Shelley novel with the bookends in Antarctica, that open and close out the book. So I hope that he's true to all of it.
We shall see when it's released next year. That's Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. You probably noticed that I can't say Guillermo. I'm just going to say Del Toro in future, which he's been working on for all that time. The writer's strike a few years ago, that did put it on hold for an extended period. But he's back with that. Also back, Ian, is another one of your favourites. Very, very soon, middle of the month, you've got the new Dexter.
Wow.
Dexter Original Sin, starring the voice of Michael C. Hall, at least, along with Patrick Gibson, who's playing young Dexter. Not sure how many episodes this is on Paramount Plus, but are you all in for this? Because sometimes when they recast these parts, they cast a new younger actor. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Well, I saw the trailer and it looked quite promising. It's got what's his name? Christian Slater's playing the father, which is odd because obviously
Great casting.
I can't remember who played the father originally. It was the guy who played Ajax in Warriors. I can't remember his name, but he played the father, but Christian Slater looks nothing like him. So
no, that's true.
Again, it's a different thing, but it does look good. The girl that got cast to play his sister doesn't really look like the character, the actress that played his sister. It's a bit weird. But hopefully it'll be good because it's all about him growing to become Dexter. In fact, what I heard was when they did the last Dexter, the studio was really upset that they killed him off because it was so successful. They didn't think it was going to be that
Don't
successful.
ruin it for me.
Spoilers.
Oh, for God's sakes!
Yeah, I haven't seen the end of that either.
I have a story to tell when Ian.
I know I've had years to watch it, but bloody hell, Ian.
But seriously, anyway, the studios were really upset,
Yes.
and they couldn't carry on with it, so they had to figure a way how to carry on with the Dexter story, and this is what they've come up with. So I'm hoping it's going to be good. So there you go.
And here's my story, because I always have stories. This would be a happy one. I'm done with rants for the day. I'm out of bullstrek mode. But I had never seen Dexter ever. And for like almost 20 years, everybody kept telling me, you got to see Dexter. I'm like, stop telling. If you tell me, I'm not going to listen to you. I'll never watch it because you're annoying me. But I'm like, I keep buying Dexter. Maybe I'll watch it. Then it was on Netflix or something. Had it in my thing. Kept meaning to watch it. Then I think they took it away or something. But I now have Dexter. Early Black Friday sale a week ago on Amazon. I got everything, including the reboot series, which I'm told I'm not supposed to watch. I'm just going to pretend I didn't hear what Ian just said. But no, I got the whole set, like all the episodes plus that New Blood thing. It was like $60 or something like that. So I have me some Dexter on Blu-ray. So I'm finally going to watch Dexter, and I'm going to assume that it ends with everybody happy and Dexter finds his revenge.
He finds true love.
Yeah,
you're not a horror guy, I know, are you, John? But this is kind of more like along thriller lines. Did you watch this show?
I never watched Dexter. I never got round to it. So maybe I'll check it out. I know a lot of people were big fans of the original sort of series. So it's worth a go. Where is it? Is it on Netflix at the moment, or the previous lot?
No, it's on Netflix. All of it's on Netflix. But it was
or for a really good price on Amazon for physical media.
It was groundbreaking at the time when it came out because it was the first show, so they say, to actually see a knife go into someone. But at the time, also it created the special effects people, because there was so much blood in every episode. The special effects people came up with plastic blood. But basically, it's like a pool on the floor, but you can pick it up. It's like wobbly plastic. So they used that quite a lot in season 2 because the amount of blood that they had in the first one, it was just too much. So I had to figure out a way how to do it without trying to spending hours trying to clean up the blood after the shoot. So that's what they came up with. So that's cool.
We've come a long way since my local youth club growing up, because my dad worked at the BBC, as you know, and he knew people that worked on Casualty at Bristol. So our youth club, they used to have people come in regularly who did the special effects, and the bloody, all the look of people that have been disfigured in an accident. So on a Friday night, they'd be there, putting scars and lacerations all across us. So that's where I got to with gore. But by what Ian said, it's come a long way since a youth club on a Friday night in a local Somerset town.
It is a terrific show. If anybody hasn't watched Dexter, the last few seasons of the original show wasn't very good, but the first 3, especially the Trinity saga, absolutely amazing. So, the author was saying, right? He was saying that everybody kept asking him, well, why would you write a serial killer and try and make a hero out of him? And he said, it's not about that. It's about if somebody does evil in the world, and you were given a chance to eradicate it, wouldn't you eradicate it? And this is what Dexter's all about. So there you go.
It's a fascinating character. I love the ones that I've seen. Yeah, that's Dexter Original Sin. What a great title for a sort of prequel series as well. Really looking forward to hearing what you've got to say about that. No spoilers, though, preferably. Bloody hell.
I'm going to tell you how it's going to be. With Scotch's lifetime guarantee. Tape what you want both night and day. Then re-record, not fade away. Re-record, not fade away.
If it's Scotch, it's guaranteed for life.
Perfect cue for something a lot less scary, or maybe not now. It's our regular news slot where the mighty Bolstrick takes us into the bowels of public information films from all across the globe. He's handpicked this one as well, gentlemen and ladies out there watching, and heaven knows which sort of treat that he's got in store for us this time. So do you want to preempt this one for us, Chris?
Sure. And I just realized why I sound like crap, because my Windows computer is being a jerk and not using the Yeti. So apparently, for like the last 2 weeks, you've been hearing me through like a webcam that's mounted on top of my computer. So I'm going to go yell at that. So I apologize here. I'll go yell into the webcam. That might be better. So yeah, you didn't get the full effect of my yelling because it's being picked up from the goddamn Windows. Okay. So today, so this is again from the Workplace Safety Insurance Board, and this has to do with retail safety. Specifically, you want to be safe when you're on a ladder, hanging up for sale sign, because things can happen that are not good. Yeah, we'll just go with that.
This is going to chime with a lot of people, obviously, because there's a lot of folks out there who have worked in retail. You know, a lot of people, particularly this time of year, at Christmas, it'll be on their minds how they want to stay safe in the workplace. So let's hope we can get a few hints and tips from this latest public information film here from Canada, courtesy of Bolstrick.
Somebody help! Accident? This was no accident. The company should have replaced that ladder years ago. I knew I shouldn't have reached over like that. And why isn't there a strict policy about 2 people doing a job like this?
That's like one of those Japanese movies where the girl with the long hair comes out the telly.
Holy crap. That's all I can say. Good stunt, though.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, that is
pure horror, that is.
Well, she's lying the wrong way. She's lying the wrong way. She fell the other way, and then when we get the close-up, she's lying the wrong way. Weird.
Well, no, she's a zombie, so she can move.
Yeah. It's not the ladder's fault. She was leaning way, way too far over. It's not the boss's fault. It's hers.
Yeah.
Are these what got you into horror then, Chris?
I was well into horror by the time these things started. This just I'm a sick, twisted individual. So I find this kind of stuff. I remember I remember the first time I saw this. This is from like 2007. With those other ads. So I do remember laughing. So yeah, I'm horrible apparently.
Also, Zombie Girl, pretty fit.
Oh yeah. Well, she's dead.
Yeah, a bit of a drawback.
Yeah.
Other than that, though, I would.
And not a deal breaker, is it?
And for next week, I've got something that's actually kind of funny. So I'm going to do a more comedic one, and I might disappear because I'm going to go continue having a fight with my computer because it won't recognize Yeti. So I may disappear, but I'll be back.
Okay.
Ian's right. That was a good stunt. That was a really good stunt.
It was, wasn't it? It's a really good stunt.
I have to say, though,
crash mat will have been involved somewhere.
I know.
The last one was my favourite, though, with the rage father who decides to just scold.
Yeah, that was fun.
The woman with hot coffee, and she kind of slumps off the table to the ground.
Well, you've got the added jeopardy, haven't you? The fact that he was a misogynist too, and sort of was he going to get busted for multiple felonies?
And as I said before, Dan, in fairness, she did spill the coffee. You can't argue that happened.
Yeah, it's her fault, isn't it?
Obviously, stay tuned for more of the public information film nightmares. If you like that kind of thing, we've got more coming your way in the not too distant future. Chris has gone off to sort of tinker with his Yeti. It's not a euphemism. It's a genuine thing. And we are here at the Spacebook Live, getting stuck into another perennial former favourite. I don't know. It's one of the big three still, isn't it, that make up the trinity of Star Trek, Doctor Who, and Star Wars. People over the years have said, oh, it's not the big three anymore, it's the big four. But every time they try to add a fourth to the big three, that extra one usually goes completely south. They try to add Game of Thrones to it. That went wrong. They tried to add the MCU to it, and that went wrong as well. So it remains still the big three.
Hello.
And yeah, we've got it. Is that sounding better? Are you happier now?
So my webcam has been fired. It's no longer connected to my computer. So the only device I have that can actually input sound is the Yeti. So if you can hear me, other than ghosts, it's the Yeti.
We can hear you.
We can hear you loud. We can hear you loud and clear. And we've got tech support in the live chat as always. We've got PD Rich has joined us in the live chat. So has Stephen Braddock, who says, I think he's quite taken with the girl in the film we've just watched as well. She's dead fit now. What else have we got? WTF says Lord Thoth. And PD Rich also says, I used to watch Dexter on Freeview and then it disappeared like Lost did. Well, that's, if you rely on something like Freeview, I think Freeview is all well and good, but you can never bank on Freeview. It's a terrible service, really, isn't it? Yeah, you're quite right. At the end of the day, it's free. You shouldn't complain too much, but blimey. Yes, so we got a lot to talk about, everybody. Can't wait to get your thoughts on all of this as well as all of that. Let's get stuck into it, shall we? Let's go out to the final frontier.
Computer, access the new keepsake magic ornament from Hallmark.
Accessing USS Enterprise, a collectible ornament accurately representing the Galaxy-class starship. Ornament carries Earth date 1993 and illuminates in a realistic manner.
The new Starship Enterprise ornament, please.
Replications are copies. Only Hallmark carries authentic keepsake ornament.
Suggest solution.
Call 1-800-HALLMARK for
Very cool.
Generations of geeks have thrilled mostly to the adventures, the ongoing missions, even of various different crews of the starships across Star Trek, haven't they? Mostly the Starship Enterprise, but the Voyagers and the Deep Space Niners as well. So yes, this is a show in one form or another that most of us have fallen in and out of love with over the years. All those movies too that lit up the box office in the 80s in particular and into the 90s. But Star Trek is a very strange brand to be a fan of. If you've been there for, say, the last 10 to 12 years, it's hard to know where it works the best. Sometimes it's hard to know whether they even want us to watch the damn thing or not. It's been seized largely by a complete moron called Alex Kurtzman when it comes to the television, which has led it down so many blind alleys now, so many false starts of promising the goods and never actually delivering. I'm not sure when the rot began to set in, but I don't think Star Trek fans have really had a good deal since the 1990s. One slice of 90s Trek that has always divided opinion, though, has been the movie Star Trek Generations. That marked its 30th anniversary just last week. I think it was a week and a half ago, something like that. And obviously this film was seismic. I remember counting down the weeks until this was released. I'd been a huge fan of The Next Generation, and I love those original Trek movies. So the prospect of them being brought together somehow was very enticing, wasn't it? It went better for some than for others. Yes, so by the end of it, only one of the captains was standing, really. So that was that. A bit of a strange experience, a deflating experience for Captain Kirk. Whereas Mr. Spock, he didn't even die on screen. This was the last we saw of Mr. Spock in 2016's Star Trek Beyond there, when the Spock of the Kelvin timeline received a sort of message telling him that Spock Prime was dead. I mean, he had a hard time, didn't he? Imagine going from one universe into another and still having the same old shit. This guy couldn't get a day off, could he? But hopefully he could be at peace now, thanks to this latest video, this curious production that surfaced on YouTube around a week ago from the Otte channel. I've never been really that sure what Otte is. It seems official, but then again, it's not, because it's not connected to Paramount, even though Paramount people are on the credits, along with all manner of people that you wouldn't ever think were connected to it at all. It's all in memory of the late Leonard Nimoy too. It's called Unification, and this seems to have caused more meltdowns of adult geeks than what's it did, the Avengers Infinity War, than the snap a few years ago. So it's 10 minutes of brand new Star Trek, basically. It sort of stars William Shatner. It kind of stars Leonard Nimoy. And it just landed, Gary, in the most innocuous way. It just appeared. I had no idea they were making this. So when did you come across this and how?
Well, I had no idea that it was coming out. And of course, then it starts flooding all over like Facebook, and a little bit of investigation, and I found out this is actually the fourth in a sequence from this company, a toy, Star Trek related, and the first three, and it's all like a connected sequence. So for this specific one, we'll be talking about a lot of what might seem weird, out of nowhere scenes, like at the first part of this, are actually scenes from the first three, because they're all kind of connected. The first one was called just 765874, which was about a 30-second one. And if you're confused about, well, what in the world is that number is actually, if you remember from the original Star Trek pilot, The Cage, was a young blonde yeoman Colt, who was the who's in, you see her a couple times in this one, and she was the Captain Christopher Pike's yeoman. And 765874 is her service number, but that was taken from an issue of the 90s Marvel comic Star Trek Early Voyages, which was a series. If you remember, Marvel had the comic,
I remember it,
for a while in the 90s. Early Voyages was about Pike's crew. There's Yeoman Colt there, and so the second one was a short called Memory Wall, which is about Colt, as you see in this one, her getting the mind meld. Here she's looking at all the screens, and this is actually from Picard season 3, where you found out that Kirk's remains are kept there. And the last one, the third one, I should say, was called Regeneration, and a lot of that was on Viridian 3, which is the planet in Generations the Enterprise crashed on, and where Kirk kind of met his end, and then Picard laid him under that kind of stone cairn. And in that one, Spock comes back to that high point where he's buried to retrieve the little badge. And so this one we're talking about today, Unification, is the fourth one in that sequence to kind of, and all of them are on YouTube. You can go find them all and watch them in sequence, and that makes some of the images in this one a little bit more comprehensible and less confusing if you realize it's part of a story,
part of a sequence. I hadn't realized there were elements of those that were in this new one. I remember watching those original short films, Ian, when they came out around 2 years ago, something like that, wondering why and where they were supposed to slot, and just thinking, oh, this is a curious thing, because they seem to have all broken new ground as regards creativity and technology. But it's so strange that they're sort of official but not official. I think watching this one, I'm getting more of a grasp of the story, such as it is, but it also seems open to interpretation too, John, in a way that the only thing I can think of that's like it is the Beatles movie Magical Mystery Tour, if you remember that. It's really trippy, isn't it?
It is, and I'll be honest, I cried with this one, because
you big baby.
Yeah, I know. Well,
this is something I've heard a lot.
It takes a lot for me to say that, because you guys are used to me being this ultra buff action hero type guy.
So, John Wick type, yeah.
Yeah. So for me to say that, it took a lot. But for me, it was the way they handle the whole. We're going to our. This is death. We're going through.
We're going to heaven.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. They didn't do what modern Hollywood does and deconstruct these characters. They did right. We're going out with the joy on their faces. You know, they're reunited at the end of it. But it's also, for me, it was almost kind of like saying goodbye to an era in my life that has given me so many moments of happiness. Because when you look at Kurtzman crud, and I stopped watching it years ago, but how these people can do this and yet those people still get to create Star Trek, it is beyond me. It really is. It is ridiculous. I mean, but hopefully it's shown them up.
Can I ask a question?
Someone's looking. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? So you know the one that you mentioned, Gary, the one where Spock came and looked at the rocks and stuff, where wasn't that in the Nexus?
No, that was actually they had to leave the Nexus in order to go fight Malcolm McDowell.
Right, gotcha.
And that's the planet that the Enterprise crashed on.
Because I was confused. I was like, "Oh, wait a minute, isn't that in the Nexus?" So it wasn't in the Nexus because I can hardly remember. I really hated Generations. I just thought it was terrible, and the way they treated Captain Kirk was awful. I thought so. After watching that film, I never wanted to watch it again. Basically,
to be honest with you, when Spock goes back to Viridian 3, there's probably still bits of Soren, Malcolm McDowell's character, all over that place anyway.
Ripping off the leaves and stuff. Actually, I think that one of the great things about this short is, except for the one line from Star Trek II, which is the life from death line, it's all silent. And I think that's genius, because then that allows us to bring our own interpretation of what's happening.
I don't know. I was disappointed that there was no sound in it. I was expecting, Captain Kirk to say something at least when he meets his friend. But I don't know. It kind of worked. But you can see when you had a faraway shot of Kirk, it wasn't him. They couldn't do the.
It is all this kind of stuff, Ian, and this and the earlier things. I think what we said about the earlier ones is that they are really borderline, where they're almost too pretentious.
Yeah.
Star Trek at its heart, it has got this pretentiousness about it. Gene Roddenberry, his vision for humanity's future, which we're going to touch on later on as our conversation moves on. But you could say that was misguided and unrealistic, but also quite pretentious as well, the way he viewed his fictional universe was. So I think that's part of ourselves that we kind of have to accept when we go to the true Star Trek universe, in that there's a lot of pretension, a lot of quotes from Shakespeare and from classics.
There's one thing that this one was so well done, but the thing is, you couldn't help going, that's effect. That's an effect. That's a fake. That's a deep fake. You couldn't help saying that in your head while you're watching it. So even though it was really well done, that kept popping into my head all the time. It kind of slightly spoilt my enjoyment.
Well, I'll take that any day over Kurtzman Trek.
Oh God, yes.
I wouldn't say it spoilt my enjoyment, but and when I read so many accounts of people just like John, people who were in bits watching this, clearly emotionally, if not devastated, then really touched by it. I'm actually more where you are, Ian. I spent the entire 10 minutes going, wow.
Yes.
How the hell? Yeah. What the hell? So I couldn't sink into the texture of it because of that. But that doesn't mean that I think it's any less. I think that's a me problem, not necessarily a problem that this had got.
The last time we saw, surrender yourself to the emotion of it all.
Yeah,
I tried. I mean, I did try, but I was just I was so wowed by this visually. And I'm not the kind of bloke, and I've said this before on shows, when we've talked about detective stuff, I'm not the kind of guy, Chris, who sits and watches a detective thriller and tries to work out who's done it before the writer, the filmmaker takes us there. I like to be taken on that journey. But something, I think because of the way I process things, maybe it's the designer, the artist, when it comes to the visual stuff like this is where I have those impasses, where I can't help but be a little harder to get sort of pulled into it. But I was so impressed
Well done.
by this.
Yeah. Well, I think when you talk about Star Trek and pretension, I think the classic series, especially compared to Kurtzman Trek, it comes off completely differently. In classic Star Trek, it's about analyzing the human condition, and yes, you could look at a lot of the titles like "Let That Be" or "Last Battlefield" and so forth, which could be pretentious. But we never looked at it that way because it was an honest examination of the possible future of humanity, written and filmed and aired during a very different era. When you compare that to modern Trek, the knife cares not for the lamb's cry or whatever the hell that episode. That's the one. No, that's the episode where Discovery lost.
See, they're reaching for that. They're reaching for that kind of pretension and that kind of almost as if to make it seem higher than it is. But they're overdoing it, just like they overdo absolutely everything. I think with the original series and with TNG to a lesser extent, they did it really, really well because it just seemed right that it belonged in that particular world. That's why I've never had a problem with it. It's not a problem I think that Star Trek has got, but I think it's a characteristic of that universe in particular. In a way that other shows like Doctor Who, for example, and several other shows have got a kind of Doctor Who has got a sort of COD aspect to it, COD history, never COD science in particular, but there's a certain shorthand employed there which is unique to that. And I think that Star Trek, the way it measures pretension with genuine ideas and humanity, is particular to it. And it's
all I would say, Dan, as well, is that the proper Star Trek, it's about hope, not woke. You know, that's what I would say.
When we last saw Captain James T. Kirk, he, as I said, he was having a good time in the Nexus, but he got sort of pulled out of it, didn't he, by Captain Picard, and to stop Sorin, as he said, we must stop Sorin. And so Captain Kirk ended up brown bread. It didn't. So he came out of it considerably worse than Captain Picard. Here he's looking absolutely incredible. This is a performance partly from William Shatner. He was involved, but the bulk of it, the physical stuff, was done by this guy. I'm going to get his name right, Sam Witwer.
Yeah, brilliant.
I've seen him. If you're a fan, I've seen him in something before.
If you're a fan of Smallville, he's the one that played Doomsday, or the human who becomes Doomsday in season 7, I think, of Smallville.
He was also in the rebooted Battlestar Galactica, and he was Crashdown. You know, he was the pilot.
Of course he was.
And he's also done a lot of stuff as well. I mean, one thing that I thought he was really good at is when they did the Xbox 360 games, The Force Unleashed, where he's playing, you know, a Sith. Basically, he was the guy that played that. So he's done a lot of stuff, and I like the stuff I like the fact of him. He calls things out, you know, especially in the current era, if it's a load of nonsense. I think the last thing he commented on about, you know, the Obi-Wan series, and he said, you know, where Obi-Wan met Darth Vader, and he said, this makes no sense whatsoever. So he's very, very good at what he does, and
looking across at Star Wars. Looking across at Star Wars, John, the last, maybe not the last time I saw something like this, but a key element, a key use of this kind of storytelling, I suppose, was Rogue One, where they mapped Peter Cushing onto another actor's face to bring Grand Moff Tarkin back to life again. I haven't seen that film for a little while. Technology's moved on considerably. Was in the 6 years since that film came out, so I haven't watched it for a long time to see how well it's aging or not. But here, for all intents and purposes, Chris, to me, that's William Shatner walking around. That's William Shatner sat there. I could not work out the way his face moved, everything about it. I grew up watching this man, and that was William Shatner. But apparently, it is this guy. I couldn't see the join, Chris.
I can, you can kind of tell, like there is an uncanny valley to the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I think what struck me about this is happiness, but then disappointment, because we've been teased twice with the possible return of real Star Trek. So now I just get kind of depressed when I see real Star Trek because it has nothing in common with current Star Trek. The first time we sort of saw, we're like a glimmer of hope was season 1 of Strange New Worlds. We're like, oh, this can go one way or the other, but it has potential. And season 2 happened, and that's
yeah.
But see, I actually think now we need to start demanding that they bring back T.J. Hooker and have this Sam Whitner be Shatner again.
Okay.
I'd probably watch that, to tell you the truth. When I look at
roll
the picture,
over the bonnet.
Exactly.
When I look at that shot there between Generations and Unification at the two Kirks, it's weird that for me it's everything from the neck up actually looks more realistic than the costume. It's the costume that looks almost fake and almost too clean.
Yeah.
It's incredible to think that's what I was looking at rather than the face. They completely convinced me that I was watching William Shatner. And I think I spent the entire 10 minutes going, almost trying to see, are my eyes deceiving me here? I thought it was incredible. And I've spoken to several people who've watched it multiple times. I didn't actually watch this until yesterday or the day before. It's one of those things where I'd seen it. It just flooded social media. So I tried to stay away from too many spoilers about what was in it. I thought, well, I've got to see this. I've got to talk about it because I remember how good the last one was. But the other ones were nowhere near as long as this, Gary, and they didn't contain as much actual story. As Ian says, there's no dialogue. No, there's definitely story here, if you can crack it.
Well, yeah, the first one was like about a minute long. The next two were maybe 2 to 3 minutes. This is 9 minutes, so it's definitely the longest. And I mean, I have my own personal explanation of kind of what it is that we're seeing, but I will say that the one where I really choked up, I wasn't like John. I wasn't doing like a Shooty Gatwa impersonation when I was watching this.
I wasn't wearing pants.
No, but I mean, I wasn't crying, but I did choke up. And the scene where I choked up is where Robin Curtis came back as Savick. Yeah. That just really got me. I was not expecting that, and that just really struck me for some reason. And then she was with her, another deep dive now that character behind her, and you can pretty much tell that they're implying it, but that character behind her and listed in the credits as Sonak is Savick and Spock's son. And that character is from a novel from the 90s called Vulcan's Heart, where Spock and Savick get married and they have a son named Sonak, and that's who that is.
Someone said to me about, why is he crying? And I said, well, it's half human of a half human, isn't it? So
well, he's
more emotion.
He's quarter Romulan because she's half Romulan.
Oh yeah,
she's half Romulan, half Vulcan. That would make him a quarter Romulan.
Was that official though, mate? Was it official?
Yeah, it's official because they filmed the scene. They filmed the scene and cut it.
Yeah. So it's not.
So we have dives from the comic series and a very obscure comic series at that. We have the novels in there too. We've got lots of Trek lore, mostly from the original series and movies, but from elsewhere as well. I mean, I couldn't work out who this character was meant to be. This is Yor, who is apparently a character from later seasons of Star Trek Discovery, which is obviously going to explain why I haven't seen it, because I gave up on that show bloody years ago.
He's a time traveler and a dimension hopper. Originally, this character is from the Kelvin universe. Who hopped over to the Prime/Discovery universe, and he's a time traveler, so that means that he can show up, because Discovery obviously is like centuries in the future now. The last couple seasons were, and so then he comes back to do this. So they pull from Discovery too.
Yeah, but as it's pretty inconspicuous. I don't mind them doing that because it doesn't spoil. There's so much about this that isn't spelt out, Ian, that it's one more thing I don't understand. It's fine, and if it means something to the people who do enjoy Discovery, I'm not going to begrudge them that. Both of them are fine to enjoy what they want.
What is it trying to say, though? Because I was too, like you, Dan, I was too amazed at the effects to try and figure out what the whole thing was about. So basically, if he's dead, how come Savick is there and old? And I was just confused over it. It seems like it was just like a dream or something.
Gary's right. Gary's right. And this, in my view, this is the key. It's Kirk's body at the Daystrom Institute, the Daystrom Space Station, in season 3 of Picard from 18 months ago. So that's we saw him on life support. They've got his body. He's there, and obviously it's retrieved from the planet from Generation. So he's there somehow. His functions being maintained. It seems that they're being maintained by Ensign Colt, just as Gary was saying in this. How, again, because obviously Picard Series 3 happens how long after The Cage?
150 years, probably.
Yeah. So this would be one old chick.
One of the keys, in my personal opinion, for a possible interpretation is the shot of Gary Lockwood as Gary Mitchell at the very beginning. So everybody says, well, he died. He was a god. He's not going to be slowed down by a boulder falling on him. So if you assume that Gary Mitchell is still around, my personal interpretation is that Gary Mitchell now remember from the Nexus, even if you leave the Nexus, a portion of yourself remains, your essence remains, just like Whoopi Goldberg says. So my personal interpretation is that Gary Mitchell took Kirk's essence from the Nexus, put it in Kirk's reanimated body. So that actually is Kirk in this. This is not like a Nexus thing we're watching. And, brought Kirk back to be there for Spock, at the moment of Spock's death. And that really was Saavik, and that really was their son. And all those were actually real people.
Well, there's another interpretation as well that's going round, and it is effectively like they're talking about, because at the end of Generations, when he's dying, he goes, "Oh my," as if he's going into the afterlife, and he's seeing it as a brand new adventure, and they're effectively going along the route of, okay, well, in the afterlife, time is irrelevant, so he's seeing different people, different things throughout his history and into their future. So it's almost like a bit of a vision quest. And then at the end, as Ian was saying, at the end of it, he's sat with Spock, the sun is setting, and that's them going off to the afterlife.
See, what you're talking about, I think what we're all saying is that everywhere you look at this and everywhere you can possibly come at this, it implies what we've been shown in Star Trek before is possible with Vulcans, that separation of the physical body and the mind and the essence, the soul almost, that can be separated and put back together. And that Kirk is snatched away either from the Nexus or at his moment of death, just like you've just said, or from the Nexus, and at some point sort of physically reconstituted in his body, which survives at the Daystrom satellite. But it seems to me from that, I hadn't taken it that any of these things had actually physically happened.
Is there
that's why I said about
an explanation to what all this really means?
I think there's probably going to be another one coming, because some of the Colt stuff is still not explained. Why she was getting the mind meld, why she was on that big high hill with the eye looking thing, and what she was touching.
Oh God, I'm so confused.
I think there's probably going to be more with that character to kind of try to tie what all these images mean. But I mean, when I was watching this, I thought, and I watched them a few times, I thought, this type of thing is too carefully crafted for them just to be throwing random images that don't mean anything.
Yeah.
So
it all means something.
Why is Gary Mitchell in there? That has to mean something. Why is that shot of Colt looking at the Daystrom Institute? That has to mean something. So I was just trying to tie it all.
See why I don't think any of this is corporeal. While I think it's all to do with the kind of an afterlife and a kind of vision quest, and that nobody is really where they seem to be. That Spock can see Kirk, and Kirk can see and interact with Spock, but nobody else could, is that we get this scene with the three the three Kirks, it all seems metaphysical to me. I love the fact that they haven't nailed it down, because you can interpret it, I suppose, however you like.
I don't want them to. I'd rather it was, it was not explained, because people can interpret it themselves, can't they? If you want it to be afterlife, it's afterlife. If you want it to be, he's artificially kept alive and this is him in some sort of artificial stasis, that you can think that as well. But
given the fact I saw this after everybody else, John, and I only had time to research it really quite briefly, it is a proper Aladdin's cave of theories and nuggets. Nothing is on screen in this for so much as a millisecond without it actually meaning something. Everything has been considered to one degree or another, to a point where you wouldn't have even dreamt. I'm barely scratching the surface just with the images that I've got on screen now. It's mind-blowing what's going on.
And this is great, because if you look at the hands are in the exact, just when Kirk holds Spock's hand in the motion picture, and Spock said, even this simple feeling is beyond V'ger's comprehension. But you look at the position of the hands, they exactly match then and in this one.
How much involvement did William Shatner have in it? That's what I'm wondering.
He was executive producer.
His name was on the credits, and we know that he's got a frosty relationship with Paramount. There's no love lost there at all. Maybe that could explain why he's happy to play in this sandpit and work with these people who obviously revere him and respect him and wish a better ending to the character, even if only in this sort of this metaphysical and open-ended kind of way.
Have you seen the interview of him from this with Shatner on the bridge?
I haven't. I've got several things bookmarked. I thought, and there are so many of them, because Sam Witwer's also been given interviews. Firstly, I thought, well, what shall I watch first? Secondly, should I watch too much of this? Will it break it completely?
I think it's quite nice where, he's talking about, part of it, he did it because of his love for sort of Leonard Nimoy. And he's quite emotional at one point, because he talks about, a few months before his death, Leonard just broke off communication with him completely. And it's haunted him since. So
yeah,
I think he did it, he wanted to do it. Maybe he wanted it as a legacy for himself as well, and for Leonard. So I'm just glad he did, because, talking about all of this is what Star Trek always did. It made you think. Kurtzman Trek doesn't make you think. It literally
makes you vomit.
It
makes you run to the bathroom.
Yeah. And it's great. They must be hating it right now because of all of the profile this is getting.
Well, I don't think. I mean, they included their stuff in this, so I don't think they'll be too bad about it.
But they. Yeah, sorry, Chris, you go.
I was just going to say, what does official Star Trek have? So, real Star Trek, which is what I'll call this, gave us this, and current official real Star Trek is giving us a Starfleet Academy show, which is probably. I have a feeling Discovery is going to look like a masterpiece compared to this. They're giving us a Section 31 series.
No, that's a TV movie, not a series.
The TV movie. They've already killed Strange New Worlds, but we're going to get 2 more seasons of that. I'm like, they had two opportunities. They could have turned Strange New Worlds into a great show, but instead they gave us a musical and the other stuff.
God, that was
they could have gone with, and this is what we're seeing here. A lot of this plays off from Picard season 3, which was supposed to be Star Trek Legacy, but I think Kurtzman is jealous of Metellus because Metellus isn't a bumbling moron. So that's what everybody wants. We're not going to get that, so we're getting all this garbage. So this does not make them look good at all. I'm like, oh look, real Star Trek, but not official Star Trek, created a masterpiece. You're going to have a bunch of Zoomers bonking at Starfleet Academy. Which is the art piece here?
That'll be during Sweeps Week.
Yeah.
I think this convinces me. I mean, I noticed that Kevin Feige's name was on the credits of this. Did anybody see that?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The Marvel Studios guy. I do remember hearing years ago that he was a massive Star Trek fan, so maybe that's where this comes from. I thought, what are all the strangest things to see on there? But absence of Alex Kurtzman. There were several names I do recognise connected with Paramount, but no Alex Kurtzman. Terry Matalas was involved in this as well. He was there. So there must be there is something going on at Camp Actual Star Trek, and it seems to me the fact that Terry Matalas hasn't spoken about it for such a long period of time. Well, not only that, but they haven't spoken about him either. Even if it's just a thanks, Terry, good luck in what you're doing next month. It's been nothing. So there's obviously something going on there.
He's doing something else, though.
Yeah, he's with Marvel doing the Vision series, which is frankly the only thing that's going to get me watching anything connected with Marvel. As you're quite right, rightly say, Chris. Strange New Worlds goes from bad to worse. This is. Now, I'm quite.
I would say in the normal universe of entertainment, which might have been like the universe 10 years ago. Anybody that did that to a show that actually did have potential would be fired.
I agree completely.
You can just look at it on screen. It's a goddamn train wreck. So Paramount is not in a good place right now. So, I'm I'm known as Mr. Grumpy Pants, but sometimes I can think optimistically.
Why does Spock look like a... Anyway.
Now, I just realized, this just occurred to me just now, Dan, as you were talking. The fact that this sequence of films, and like I said, I don't think they're done because they haven't resolved some of the Yeoman Colt stuff.
No.
Yeoman Colt is in the time frame of Strange New Worlds. She's part of Pike's crew. They could use that to tie this whole sequence into Strange New Worlds.
They could introduce her into Strange New Worlds any day now, just like they've introduced Kirk.
She's getting a mind meld from Spock. So they could actually make this whole sequence of films, including the Unification, canon to Trek if they tie it into Strange New Worlds.
Do you know
I look at what a toy has given us here, John, in that 10 minutes. The real reunion of the true Kirk and Spock. Yeah. And I've, like Chris, I thought Strange New Worlds was really good when it first started. I don't want to say brilliant, but it at least felt like Star Trek. It was very evocative and it was loads of fun. But in the second season, they made mistake after mistake after mistake. There was a few good episodes, don't get me wrong. It wasn't a complete disaster. But unfortunately, the mistakes, the ones that were there, the ones that were there were glaring, including this horrendous miscasting of James T. Kirk. I mean, Ian, if you think that Ethan Peck isn't convincing as Mr. Spock, you should see Paul Wesley as Kirk.
No,
it's the most ridiculous piece of casting you could possibly imagine. He's nothing like him.
Well, Dan, in this, it's no coincidence in the current era that we've had that they've created a Kirk that is basically a bumbling moron.
Everybody is.
The women in there are talking down to in the show. It's not anywhere related to actually proper Kirk at all. But the other thing I would say as well is kind of going on to what Chris was saying about Kurtzman Trek and everything. On the one side, you've got Unification, right, that has been universally praised for what they've done, and there's the positivity is off the scale, right? On the other side, within the same time frame, you had Anson Mount on Twitter X basically making a disgraceful comment to people, basically saying
to Star Trek fans.
And supposedly MAGA fans after the election about
political.
Basically, he's going to Blue Sky, and he won't be able to indoctrinate kids now that he's going to Blue Sky.
God.
This is the trouble with it. There's Unification gives hope and it gives joy to so many people because of the series that we grew up with and the movies that gave us that, because they were well written characters. And you just wanted to watch every moment of those shows and movies. Now, Strange New World, and as Chris said, you got Star Trek Academy. It's absolute garbage because there is none of that. It's literally, it's got the Star Trek name on it, but it's effectively something completely different. And Paramount are up for sale at the moment, aren't they? That's
Yep.
meant
Oh
to
yeah,
be
it's not going good.
finalising.
Well, John,
So
I have to
new
say,
owners looking at this. New owners looking at this, Chris. They must be thinking, well, hang on a minute. If
What have we bought? What are we potentially buying?
Unification, yeah, why can't we do something like Unification as opposed to, you know, fat girl in an engineering room crying because she hasn't picked up
yes,
coffee, you know?
Chili.
Yeah.
Well,
Big boned.
well, here's what, and I think we've seen many destroyed franchises, but none of them ever looked like they were coming back. I don't think I've ever been as disappointed as I was about a year and a half ago. We had finished Picard season 3. I need to watch it again, you know, with the distance of time to see how well it holds up. But at the time we had Picard season 3, and I remember being like genuinely happy. I'm like, yes, we're going to get Star Trek back. Terry Matalas actually knows what he's doing. He cares about the fans. He actually showed up in the chat. But what was that followed up with? I don't think I've ever had my hopes dashed like that before, because we had that. Then the next thing we had was Strange New World season 2. My God. Then no Star Trek Legacy. Then they announced Star Trek Starfleet Academy, or whatever that's called. Then the Section 31. I'm like, okay, you guys had it right here. You had Star Trek back. You have somebody that knows what he's doing, and you did this. And how is a company interested in presumably making a profit go from this is what people want, but no, you're going to get more of Michael Burnham and a Star Trek musical, and again, Sumer's boinking at Starfleet Academy and the Section 31 thing that I'm so sick of goddamn Section 31. You could have given us something awesome. You had something awesome, and it's like, nope, we don't want that. Throw it in the garbage, and then give us a bunch of shit. Sorry, Dan, I didn't mean to get you in trouble. But it's like, that's what they did to Star Trek. So it's like, I see this and I'm like, this is awesome. But I'm like, I'm not going to get my hopes up again because they've never been dashed like that. I'm like, Dr. Nutty never came back. Like, that show's been in the dumpster for years. Star Trek Mandalorian, maybe, but that's been in the dumpster for years. Everything else has been in the dumpster for years. But no, we had our Star Trek back for 10 goddamn weeks. And then I'm on this is my second rant. I am so sorry, everyone. I'm going to shut up now.
You go for it, mate. You go for it.
Here's one thing to keep in mind.
The views are going up.
Here's one thing to keep in mind. The 60th anniversary of Star Trek is in 2 years, 2026. Really? So if the acclaim for this convinces whoever at Paramount to pull a toy in and have them do something for this, almost feels like a 60th anniversary gift from
it does.
people at a toy. But if they can pull a toy in to help them do something for the official 60th, something like this, that's a possibility.
They're not going to, you know.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll choose to live in hope on this one.
Well, good luck with that one.
I mean,
here's what makes me really mad. I got my final rant, and the thing that makes me mad about modern Star Trek. So William Shatner is 93. He actually he resurrected Kirk in the novels 30 years ago. There's a 10 novel series on it. He's wanted to do Captain Kirk again for 3 decades. Even now, William Shatner, I can't believe the guy's 93 when I was watching his interviews in relation to this.
Incredible.
He could do Captain Kirk again. You have William Shatner, who's still alive, who can still do Captain Kirk, who wants to do Captain Kirk, but because you don't like his politics, you won't let him do Captain Kirk. So you get us whatever that little simp was we had at the end of season 1 of Strange New Worlds, and I'm slurring now. And I'm like frothing at the mouth. I'm like, it just the stupidity, the disrespect, the everything just makes me mad, and I've got to stop making videos.
Well, then why don't watch it? Then don't watch it. I've stopped watching this. I mean, I know Dan was brave to watch the first season of Brave New World, but I
don't watch it.
I knew where it was going, and I wasn't.
To be honest, Ian. To be honest, it hasn't really gone anywhere as regards sort of wokeism and that kind of thing. Star Trek Strange New Worlds is quite light on that kind of content, but I'm afraid it's simply it's simply very average TV. That's the problem with it. It's not especially woke. It's not
That's
of
not
that.
what I was
It's not.
talking about.
It's not like Discovery. It's
No,
just.
but
It's
Dan.
just not what it could be. It's disheartening
No,
to see
but
a series because you
Dan-
remember.
And
Let
that's
me
not what
just
I was
explain
talking
though.
about.
He's
That's not what I was talking about.
watching. I could say
I didn't want. I didn't care whether it was going to go woke. I just don't like the idea that they're going to destroy Kirk because we heard they were going to do Kirk and Spock on the first season. I knew they were going to destroy them or do them differently, so I just stayed away. There's nothing
I've
to do.
stayed
woke
away.
at all.
Ian, I haven't watched one episode into season 3 of Star Trek Discovery. I haven't watched it since. I will never watch. I did, for some reason, watch the season finale. I will never watch Strange New Worlds again. I'm not even going to give us. I might do a Professor Dinkle style video making fun of the first episode of Starfleet Academy because it sounds that ridiculous. But I won't be watching that. I have no interest in watching Section 31. No, I definitely see where you're getting from. I don't watch it anymore. Like, I'm done with it.
I'm the same as you, Chris. I think was it season 3, the first one where they went into the future? Was that 3 or 2?
I lasted one episode.
I think that was 3.
I bowed out at that point. Yeah, I was like, no, this is garbage.
And by the way, going off just really quickly. By the way, going off one of the things that Chris mentioned. Anybody watching, if you've not read the, I guess they call them like the Shatnerverse novels, which is basically 3 trilogies, which take place after, bringing Kirk back after generations. Really good.
Yeah, actually, what I'd say, Gary, is not even the books, but there's an entire audio series abridged, read by William Shatner. So basically, the last one came out in 2006. Which is actually the last of the Simon & Schuster abridged audiobooks, which I'm sure a lot of Star Trek fans know about. I still had them all digitally. But no, all 9 of those books, they're abridged into 3 hours, read by William Shatner. So basically, William Shatner, at least his voice, is still playing Kirk as far as 2006.
Well, okay.
Wow.
I mean, I suppose if we think, okay, over on Paramount, we have like 20, 30 hours worth of bilge, whereas you've got sort of 10 minutes of quality over quantity any day. Subscribe to Toy's YouTube channel and just see what they put out next. It's a pity that 10 minutes every 18 months is kind of where it's at for the time being, particularly, as you say, as Star Trek approaches that 60th anniversary. You'd like to think something special was coming because they barely acknowledged the 50th. It's overdue for long-term Star Trek fans, for any Star Trek fan. But it's not looking good, particularly as you said, John, as you reminded us with this whole thing with Paramount in its entirety up for sale. If you're looking at the things that are synonymous with Paramount that you get in the sale, you're going to be looking at Star Trek as one of the most potentially valuable ones, and it's going to stand out like a sore thumb to anyone, to any serious investor. This is something that's underperforming. Which, okay, that's good news. That's because it means that somebody sensible may look at it again, but that's not going to happen before the 60th anniversary, which means that a lot of people are going to end up disappointed, and Star Trek's going to miss another big birthday. Would be my guess. If the best you're going to get. Starfleet Academy.
I think you're right, and I think all they'll do is they'll do the usual where it'll get to the anniversary and they'll go, we're announcing this new movie that will never go into production. Just as a kind of
I've stopped following the story of the movies now until I see the clapperboard and the first shots of them on set filming. I don't fucking care. In fact, you know what? Like I said about the Batgirl movie, they filmed that and it never came out. I'll believe it when I see a trailer and a release date only. Colin Archer is in the live chat and he says, it's a controversial view, I know, but I found that Kurt's death in Generations showed how even the best character can die by effectively bad luck. On the other hand, Kirk should have had a better ending. I think story-wise, generally speaking, it's viable completely. But there are a set of 6 truly iconic characters that whereby they're worth more than that, and Captain Kirk was one of them. So I agree with you, but I don't. I don't see. And to be honest, Ian, going back to how you and I both felt about Unification, another thing I wanted to say about that, as beautiful and as technically brilliant as this was, And as it is a great retrieval job in many respects, but I have the same problem with this. If I'm taking a step back from it, and I accept why people feel the way they do about this, and I will watch this again, I'm actually getting a little... I don't understand this fascination, this need to see these characters actually die, or to even acknowledge that they have died. I have no idea, for example, why within Doctor Who we had to be told that the first the Brigadier and then Sarah Jane Smith had both passed away.
Yeah.
Why do we... Now, we're not silly, we're not stupid, but the child in all of us would like to believe that, okay, they're human beings, they're not going to have adventures forever, but you don't want to see these people fade and literally pass away. And I feel the same about Star Trek characters. The ideal end for these two characters was both at the end of The Undiscovered Country, really.
It was.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can see why they found it impossible to resist bringing Kirk back and pairing him with Patrick Stewart. Potentially, it should have been dynamite. But generally speaking, I certainly don't need it, and I don't want to see any more of these iconic characters literally die on screen. I don't need that not tired, personally. Other people may feel differently. I'd be very interested in what you've got to say about that in the comments section too.
And I think, Dan, as well, I think, even Ronald D. Moore and Brannon Braga have been on record since, and they've said, because at the time they wrote the Next Generation finale, All Good Things, which was highly praised and was really good.
Yeah,
they also did Generations as well, and they basically said, they fucked up Generations. I don't know if
they were painted into a corner with both Spock and Kirk. They were kind of painted into a corner with that, so I can almost forgive them for it, because they're both fairly nondescript endings for the characters. They're forgettable endings for characters who are unforgettable. And so that's what I mean. This is a kind of retrieval job. So I'm thinking, okay. But now can we just stop doing this? We don't need to see one last battle, one last mission. No, have them go off and do it forever. I don't want... Did you let John Wick carry on forever? Let Connor McLeod carry on forever. Let all of these characters just carry on and carry on where we can't see them.
Do you know the effects, right? They're great. I wouldn't say they're amazing. I think they're great. But if they can do that now, could you imagine what they can do in 10 years' time?
It's unimaginable, mate.
I know.
Unimaginable.
Wow. They might be able to bring them back with the permission from the families and have another Star Trek film with Spock and Kirk. I mean, it's endless, isn't it, what they can do now?
Well, I saw Captain Kirk walk around there in Unification.
I don't like recastings, and I really, really don't like this AI idea. No, unless it's like the actual person. Say, you're spiritual or not. Do you believe in a human soul? Which I'm not religious, but I believe in that. So maybe it becomes from your perspective. But for me, because I believe there's that human soul, I think it even comes across on TV. If it's not the original living characters, if it's not... No, I'm not. People are going to say Bullstrick's gone crazy. No, I'm not a religious zealot. I'm just speaking sort of from what I believe. There's something beyond what we understand. And it goes beyond just the visual and the auditory. It's not going to be those characters, because it's not going to be those actors, because, again, my wacky phraseology right now, the soul isn't there. It's not actually them, which is why you could do another, fourth season of Star Trek, the original series. Only 3 of them are still alive right now. 4 of them have passed on. Just
new crew, new adventures. That's all you need to do. Well written, isn't it?
But Dan, I think you hit the nail on the head about Kirk. I actually thought killing Kirk off at Generations was a colossal mistake. I just don't think, as you said, that you should kill your heroes. Whether it's, I don't want to see Indiana Jones die on screen. No. Whether it be Kirk,
he got punched by a woman though.
Whether which is just as bad.
She's worse.
But whether it's, pick your legendary character of choice. Zorro. I don't want to see Zorro get killed by getting skewered with a sword.
Yeah.
I don't want to see any of that. It's like they just need to ride off into fictional Valhalla and have eternal adventures that we just don't know their final fate.
Yeah.
And we need these characters now more than ever, in my opinion.
Just like Samuel Beckett. Yeah.
Yeah, I think these have been taken
There
out.
you go.
That we do need them. They're important. I think people need role models to look up to. Kirk was a role model of mine, just like the Doctor was.
Well, it's
they're missing at the moment, aren't they?
Well, here's another argument. Or give us new heroes that are like those. When I look at sort of my heroes, and I think this comes when you get older and you sort of revisit things that you liked in your youth and things that you haven't seen in 20, 30, 40 years. You start to realize, I'm like, that was a great character. That was a great show. But it kind of only exists in that time. Whereas, Captain Kirk, for me, it's like definitive Kirk is the original series. I like movie
Without
Kirk.
a doubt.
There's something unique about series Kirk. Tom Baker, the 70s Doctor Who. He's, my other, I have Kirk and the Fourth Doctor are my two heroes and the actors. It's the Fourth Doctor only works in the 1970s, even though, Tom Baker is still playing him on that company who I will not mention by name. But I think it only exists in that time. And I wish, and this is because Hollywood can't come up with anything new, but I wish we would move away from resurrecting characters or bringing a character back decades after the actor last played them, where it's not going to be the same. We age. We're not, it's a lot of this is just a moment in time. Like, keep the Star Trek idea, stop going back, or whatever STD was supposed to be in the future. I don't know. I haven't watched it since. But give us a new Star Trek show, say 100 years after the end of the Next Generation. No characters coming back, no descendants of characters. Go with the same concept of Star Trek. Probably not Gene Roddenberry's version, but sort of the altered version with the sort of the end of Next Generation DS9. Go with that ideal, that aesthetic, and give us something new characters. No connection to the old one. That's the way you do it. Stop bringing characters back. Stop recasting characters. Stop bringing actors back decades after
the original
they're done.
timeline as well, don't you? You want to go back to the
Exactly.
original timeline. Yeah,
Yep.
I understand. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's my
Gary Mitchell agrees.
My sixth rant today. I'm sorry about that.
No, you don't have to be sorry. What's wrong with you?
Gary Mitchell concurs
really
with all of that, I
happy
think.
Trek. I was happy. See, you notice there's a difference, folks. You look at like the last 10 weeks, I was perfectly happy. Yesterday, I do a video, and I'm still in that mode.
You have to access that side to you, don't you? And let rip, let it loose, Chris. Yes, so we have been talking about this Unification. It's up on the Atoy YouTube channel. It doesn't turn up in a search. I don't think it's monetized. There's
Not
something
allowed
about
to,
the way
I
that
think,
this
yeah.
is funded. I don't think it's a charitable company as such, but they're not allowed to monetize it in any way, are they? That could be this unique.
Yeah.
Basically, I think that's how they're allowed to make it, to make Star Trek and not have to have it beholden to Paramount and that prick Alex Kurtzman. So it is there. It's not exactly tucked away. You can find it. It's been shared openly on social media, and there's lots of support information as well. Yeah, this is our catch up on all things Star Trek. It's the 30th anniversary of Star Trek Generations, believe it or not. The movie that brought to a close, really, that topped off the 7-year run of Star Trek The Next Generation on TV, a show that I think is special to pretty much all of us. Star Trek has sort of limped on in recent years, but there's maybe there's some hope for the next generation. I don't know. Those characters in some way, I think basically if they get Terry Metalis back, we may see that. But more Star Trek in a moment. Something a little wilder and a little bit more real world as well.
Meteorite storm. Scotty, beam us up. Scotty! Scotty! Don't worry, Captain. It's only a shower. I don't need a brolly, you wally. Beam us up. Captain, I haven't got the power. Try, man, try. Power! More power! The man's power, man. Uh-oh. Start again.
Well, he certainly hasn't got the power. Good afternoon. But you could have national power and power gen. To register for a prospectus in the generating company's share offers, call 0272 272 272.
You Wally.
Welcome back to the Spacebook Live. That's an advert, Ian, that was made specifically for the UK back in 1991. It was everywhere, wasn't it? Power Gen, and I've Got the Power was a huge record around then.
You guys get that?
I have no idea, but it's really strange for us in the UK because there was James Doohan as Scotty, a real American icon, alongside Simon Cadell from Heidi High, a British sitcom legend. So it's like two of my favourite worlds colliding there, John.
Same universe now, isn't it?
Looks like it.
Maybe we needed these in the background in Unification as well.
Well, William Shatner saying Brolly, though. William Shatner saying Brolly.
Calling him
Wally.
Wally, yeah.
Americans don't say Wally, do you, Gary?
It's canon, you know.
Double dumbass on you. That's what.
That commercial's canon.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's a fantastic ad. They poured lots of money into that ad. My Lord, wow, geez, wow. That's even better than any Kurtzman stuff ever. Do you know what I mean? So
Star Trek was massive at the time, and it was on a real resurgence, even in Britain. I think once the Next Generation really started to take off, and the movies were bigger than ever. Yeah, so it was around the time of The Undiscovered Country. That
that would have been well. You could tell one of my favorite things about The Undiscovered Country. It's sort of like the funny part of real Star Trek is how they didn't, aside from the bridge, they didn't bother creating other sets. They just used the Next Generation.
They did.
That's
they
to
save money. Yeah, they did that. Mm-hmm.
Fabulous stuff. Yeah. Star Trek has inspired so many commercials as well as spoofs and skits and cartoons. We've all seen the famous Mad Star Trek cover, Gary. I've always wanted that framed. All of Mad's covers were beautiful, though, weren't they?
Is that one where Alfred E. Newman is in the front wearing the
in the uniform doing there's two or three, isn't there? There's one where he's got the ears on, he's live long and prosper, and I think there's another one where he's actually with Kirk and Spock. Oh, and there was one for Star Trek 4 as well.
With the you're talking Mad Magazine. They did a special edition for every Star Trek movie. Except for Star Trek 2. Or no, Star Trek the Motion Picture didn't. They started with Star Trek 2, and I remember it was called Star Trek Booby Prize. Something about Khan.
Yeah, I think they did adaptations of all the movies.
Welcome to the live chat. Fractal Jack. I don't think I've seen that account before, but I could be wrong. Fractal says the animated series is canon in my head.
It is.
I need a 100-foot Spock in my universe. Co-signed. Absolutely.
Or the little 6-inch characters.
Yeah. As Chris was saying earlier about Shatner still alive, just get him to do a new animated series or a mini series.
That'd be awesome.
I'd be happy with that. Yeah.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. They won't do it, though.
Agree.
They won't do it because we wish it,
and they hate.
So there you go.
Yeah.
They're not going to give us what we want, Ian. Bloody hell, where would it end?
Exactly.
We'll get a Michael Burnham animated series.
When the 60th come around, there'll be all these pictures of Michael Burnham and everybody, all the Kurtzman things.
Wait for the announcement. No, Discovery's been canceled. Star Trek Burnham.
Yes, I'm saying. It'll be one little picture of Spock right at the back, the real Spock right at the back, right at the very back. That's the way it's going.
Absolute carnage, mayhem, chaos on the bridge, everybody. That's what we're going to talk about next. So in the process of our conversations in recent weeks on Star Trek, we were talking about Star Trek documentaries and little things here and there that we'd seen, not seen between us. And one cropped up quite a lot. It was this documentary from 2014, an unofficial documentary that William Shatner was involved in. I can't remember exactly where it turned up first in Britain. I think it may have been on Amazon even then. It's a 60-minute documentary. introduced by Shatner himself, featuring so many Star Trek luminaries, mainly from Star Trek The Next Generation, people in front of the camera, some of the crew members that we know and love. Denise Crosby, Tasha Yar and Jonathan Frakes is in there. But much more entertainingly are people whose names we'd only seen on the credits before, Gary. People like Maurice Hurley. We get to see him speaking on camera. What a character. Dorothy Fontana's on this now, no longer with us. Star Trek legend, speaking very openly, specifically about how bringing Star Trek back to the screen for 1987 to the small screen for The Next Generation was pretty much a shit show from start to finish.
It was. I mean, I have to say, I think this is, for anybody who hasn't watched this, I think this is the most creative, entertaining, and enlightening documentary about any aspect of Star Trek that has ever been made. How any television show gets on the air, much less lasts long enough to become a legend after the total crap show of the beginning here. It's just, and it's so imaginative how there's a Western tinge, there's like this country banjo music playing all throughout, which is weird, but it works. Brilliant. And you just think how, and Shatner was the perfect one to host it because, you know, he already is I think everybody was much more open with him than they probably would have been with some anonymous documentarian coming in. They were much more free and open with him because they know that he is aware of everything. And boy, you can tell who, not so much the stars, but the behind the scenes people, you can tell who liked Gene Roddenberry and who really didn't like Gene Roddenberry, because that really comes out in like David Gerald. You can tell him Roddenberry is not his favorite person, but this is an amazingly enlightening documentary.
Yeah, I'd seen it before, but not for a number of years, since it was first released 10 years ago. I couldn't quite believe it. But you'd never seen it before, had you, Ian? We were speaking about this
I've never
3
seen
weeks
it
ago.
before, and I didn't get a chance to watch it. I'm really sorry. I was working, so I never really got a chance to see it. But I will watch it, though. I will watch it when I get the time. So it's nice to hear what people think of it.
And whoever edited it was great, because at the beginning there's this rapid cut montage of all these people talking about Gene Roddenberry. Oh, he was very considerate, and then the next clip is, oh, he was a bully. And then he was Roddenberry. The one thing about Gene Roddenberry, he was very loyal to the people that work with it. Cut to a quote, yeah, he screwed over a lot of people. It's like, wow, okay.
And in the middle of it in the middle of it is William Shatner, who at the time must have been 78, 79 when this was being made, John. And he is, even at this point in his life, was at an age where he didn't give a shit anymore. And so whilst he is professional, there's also something of the kind of the schoolboy about this. He's kind of relishing hearing about what a disaster it was initially, because these were several people that he knew. Obviously, he'd worked with Roddenberry himself extensively 20 years earlier and probably seen a version of this play out. And so he's sitting there grinning whilst he's taking all of these people, including Patrick Stewart, back through a time in his own life, which sounds like on a week-to-week basis, what must have been like going 10 rounds with Tyson most weeks.
Oh, I love it. I mean, I've said before that one of my favorite bits is it where they talk about Leonard Malish, the Gene Roddenberry's lawyer. And,
yes.
You've got one of the senior writers on the show, and he basically just says to Shatner at one point, if the window would be open, I just want to kick that bastard out of the window, like that.
That's this guy.
And Shatner's laughing, isn't he? And he's like, say that one more time, one more, like that. And he's having fun with it. And it is great stuff. And I think
the guy who used to be president of Paramount, who is all over the place in this, says at one point that, he was thinking about that lawyer. He was like, I hope you die. It's like, wow, okay.
It does seem like it was the gloves were off all the time on this.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
I mean it's such a good documentary, and I do, another bit I love as well is where the fan Gene Roddenberry gets him in to write an episode, and then he sees him in the corridor and he says to the fan Roddenberry, he says, friend, we're going to have to part company.
Oh, yeah.
And Shatner's laughing because he's going, the guy sort of thought, well, is Gene leaving? Not realizing that Gene had just spied him, and then he finds all his stuff in the hallway.
Yeah, and
I remember.
Cut to the cartoon of the dejected guy in the hall, and the little plants on the floor turned over.
Yeah, because obviously this is an unofficial documentary as well, so they've got to create their own visuals and sound effects up to a point. There are very few clips from the actual show in there. I remember following the gestation of Star Trek: The Next Generation at a great distance through columns in things like Starburst back in Britain, Starlog, TV Zone, all those things. But obviously, an ocean away, all we had was something that looked really glitzy and really special and really big was happening. I remember seeing these pictures of Gene Roddenberry there with Michael Piller and the cast of The Next Gen, and looking at these pictures for several years and wondering, who's that guy in the check blazer and why is he stood in between the star of the show and the creator of the show? And it's decades later I find out that he's a lawyer. It's that lawyer again. and he dogged the production of this entire show. So yeah, it's an incredibly entertaining documentary, and watching it again, it just went by. It seemed like 10 minutes watching this. I mean, Gene Roddenberry himself was clearly, it's no secret, this man was very, very complicated.
Yeah.
Nobody's fool.
Well, they got the section like I knew a lot of this, but first they got the section about when we're gonna get this we're bringing up this new Star Trek series and Gene has to be involved. Basically, they had to dry him out. I'm like, okay, so basically he's like a chronic alcoholic, drinking every day on a bunch of recreational bad things. So I'm like, so we had to take Gene, we had to dry him out. Then he just creates this chaos, and I think one thing that was kind of funny when they talk about like the experience of the cast, I'm like, so here they are, they're on this brand new Star Trek show, and yet they've got them in condemnable trailers in the lot with no air conditioning. And I'm just picturing this. I'm like, wow, this is how you treat
no food at the craft services table.
Had to steal for years.
but I also like when Roddenberry, it says in there, like Maury Hurlish is on there, and he's talking about Roddenberry wanted him for the part, and he's like, it's a joke, it's got to be a joke, but he wants to meet the great bird of the galaxy, Roddenberry. And then he walks into his office one day, and all of a sudden, he says that Roddenberry gets up and points his finger at him, and he just goes at him. He goes, "You don't know the difference between deflector shields and phasers."
That's right.
Well, it's like the incompetence too. You think, I'd never heard a lot about Maurice Hurley other than his tenure on the show. But my God, I'm like, hey, Roddenberry's enough of a disaster. By the second season, there's a couple good episodes, but it's a goddamn train wreck. And he finished with Shades of Grey, which is still, for real Star Trek, the worst thing ever happened. Then he's got, he's so happy when he basically gets fired. And he's, leaving the set. And he's like, I haven't smiled like that in years. And then, you kind of tell him, we didn't have the interwebs and stuff like that back when this was on. But I remember when season 3, when Evolution, even the first, 2 minutes of that, you're like, what the hell happened? It's like... It's a completely different show.
Michael Piller was who came in as the executive producer. He was the salvation of Next Gen, as they acknowledge in the closing moments of this, and they do leave the documentary kind of on a hopeful note that it has turned a corner, much more focused on character than plot, and that was all down to Michael Piller. I think he was at Ron Moore. Somebody in this said, if it hadn't been for Michael Piller, if it would have stayed the same, into season 3, it probably would have lasted maybe 3 seasons and would have been a footnote.
Yeah. Gene Roddenberry has something in common with George Lucas. They both created something amazing, but but both of them were no good for the thing they created. Because Gene Roddenberry ideas were terrible, according to a lot of people that I know as well that was on the set of The Next Generation. The same thing with George Lucas. You saw what he did to the prequels. So yeah, I mean, I can understand people saying that about him. Obviously, so there you go. In fact, he didn't even have any involvement in the movie, did he? He
was
not after the motion picture.
Well, the motion picture, in which the one thing that really annoyed me about, because I love the motion picture, and the one thing annoyed me is that offhand quote from Jeffrey Katzenberg in this, how he characterizes motion picture as like an epic disaster. Well, maybe the production of it was, but it made $140 million. And if it hadn't been successful, we wouldn't have got 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. But in any case, I think it's really fascinating how they spent a lot of time in this documentary on the idea that, you know, Gene wanted this utopian idea about how mankind doesn't have they don't have interpersonal conflict. All of their problems have been solved. And the writers are going, you can't have drama without conflict. Conflict is the essence of, humans going at each other and resolving their differences. And Gene was like wiping that away. He says, no, there is no conflict. And they said the writers are walking around going, I don't know how to write that. And it was after he left, and that wasn't a hurdle anymore, that the show
came alive.
It was.
Yeah.
Look at the people that I think the salvation of Star Trek: The Next Generation in season 3. Even when we were watching it, it's become the stuff of legend. How I don't think I've ever seen a show just do a complete 180 like that, because those first 2 seasons, although I'll watch them, they're not good. But then you look at the people that came in season 3. You had Michael Piller, but also you had Ira Stephen Bear, who was sort of assistant runner at the time. Yeah. So basically, you have that aesthetic too, where when he became showrunner in DS9, and season 3, ironically, with DS9 was its complete turnaround season. When Ira Stephen Bear becomes basically showrunner, when they bring in that conflict. And I remember when I was most of us were just kids or a lot younger when the first few seasons of The Next Generation was on there. And I could never pinpoint it, but I'm like, why is this so dull? Why are these episodes so boring? Why am I actually embarrassed to watch this? And then when you learn a lot more about Gene Roddenberry, the idea that you pulled off in the 60s, which did have conflict. Just look at Spock and McCoy, where he basically, I think he forgot about that. And when The Next Generation comes up, he's like, okay, there is no conflict. I'm like, that doesn't work. That's boring.
He bought into his own hype, hadn't he, as this kind of, as a visionary. I think that's how he saw himself, never mind how other people saw him.
You're right, Dan, because what is it? L. Ron Hubbard, who founded Scientology, basically, they were friends, weren't they? And he basically said to him, you should try and create a religion out of Star Trek. And arguably, in a way, did he? Because there's a lot of followers that kind of went that route, and the following of it.
And there are, I mean, to be fair, I mean, there are a few, diamonds among the dross in seasons 1 and 2. I think I think there's probably
Measure of a Man,
there's maybe about like 4 or 5 episodes, I think, in each of those first 2 seasons, I think, that are really kind of worthy, but the rest are just absolutely forgettable.
So some of them were key steps on the journey to the show becoming the success that it would, not just the popular success, but the creative success as well. I think one episode I would put alongside that, along the very best of Star Trek, is The Measure of a Man by Melinda Snodgrass.
Brilliant.
Here she is with William Shatner. This is the only thing I think I've got in common with William Shatner. We've both interviewed Melinda Snodgrass. There she is, one of several writers and production personnel who talks to Shatner here. I get the impression that time has been a great healer for a lot of these people, particularly somebody such as Melinda, who's gone on to do many things since, she working with George R.R. Martin and people like that. But you could see Maury Hurley speaking on this, and you can see that it was a key posting in his career that completely changed the way he looked at his career path, I suppose, and at the industry that he was working within after he'd come off Miami Vice and The Equalizer, that were both really big shows, into this. A show that was kind of, well, to say it was struggling is putting it struggling in every sense. Mm-hmm. And you can see the guy, even decades on, there's still kind of anger and pent up frustration there, and I think we've all been there. We've all had that one job where you look through your CV, you think of those bastards.
Yeah.
But it's just amusing. It's amusing that with Maurice Hurley, who's a name I've seen on the credits to however many episodes of this show, and always wondered about him, who he was, and here he is speaking, a very, very gruff, elderly man, just coming out with it. I just imagine must have been lots of scenes of this where he was effing and blinding, because that man is angry.
Yeah. I mean, fair play to him as well, because, in many ways they took forward when, the Borg were created and whatnot. He came up with a concept of there's a big bad out there, and the Romulans and the Klingons are all going to have to join forces to try and
the idea of that arc as well, John, even before J. Michael Straczynski was doing it, never mind Joss Whedon.
Yeah, exactly right. And but there's so many things that happened in that first season. I mean, I always wondered why, as a kid, why Beverly Crusher suddenly disappeared, and we got a new Doctor in the second season. It's in this documentary. She was fired, wasn't she? And
for all intents, it sounds like, for being bolshy, for being a bolshy woman.
Well, one thing I've always and I don't know if anybody else has an answer to this, but one thing I've always wondered, why was her name never included in the main credits? Dinah Mulder. If you watch season 2, she's not in the credits.
I think she was always listed in every episode as a guest star, and that was probably contractual.
Yeah, so something to do with. I wonder if that did have something to do with the termination.
She seemed to view that she was doing them a favour in sort of helping to prop up the show at a time where it was really struggling.
I did enjoy hearing her speak and to Shatner, because
very briefly
about her, and she was talking about her time on the original series and how it had already become, the way they did the sets and everything, and the production had completely changed. It was like night and day. But they didn't like her. They clearly admitted to that, didn't they?
And you could even tell. You could even tell as Patrick Stewart is relating the story about Gates McFadden departing, you can tell that's still kind of like an walking on eggshell subject. It seems like they're very, don't want to delve into it. But one of the great things I think that the first season did, which carried on through the rest of this series, into Deep Space Nine, I think they were really successful at kind of re-envisioning the Klingons as this like honor-driven society through Worf. They had that episode Heart of Glory where the other Klingons come on, and they recrafted the Klingons as an honor established culture that was very different from what was in the original series. And that was actually a success, because then they deepened that, as the seasons went on. Ron Moore, a lot of his episodes were about the Klingon culture. And when Worf transferred over to Deep Space Nine, I actually think Worf was better in DS9 than he was in Next Gen.
Great, definitely.
But that was actually a success. In the midst of all this chaos, that was actually one of their story successes, was doing that.
Yeah.
To me, watching, we've got a comment here from, I think, Stephen Braddock, who said, where is this? Yeah, I loved Star Trek since the original series was shown on the BBC, and various other comments from him, and naming Q Who as an early classic episode. So people in Britain did latch onto this, but it was very much in fits and starts. It very gradually became accepted, because it started when it started to make an impact. And this is why all of this was such a shock to me when I first began hearing about it. When it started to have an impact, it wasn't even on television at all. It was as rental cassettes at the local video shop. You could rent 2 episodes at a time. It was this was the first time I'd ever seen a TV series appear like this. You could get some vintage TV shows where there were select episodes, but a brand new show that to us in the UK was premiering on videotape like that, which is something usually reserved for big movies. Man, this show, the reasoning was for me, man, this show must be huge, must be big. And when you see like the cast, very sort of glamorous, sexy women, charismatic men, to me this was a huge show and a massive deal. And so when cast members did start to disappear in between series, I thought, well, that's weird, because to me this was like the biggest show. It seemed like it was the biggest show on TV, even though it wasn't actually on TV.
It was weird
if you were in Britain.
Well, no, it's kind of weird hearing that compared to sort of the trajectory of its fame over here, because I watched it from Encounter at Farpoint up until the end, All Good Things. Although 1987, I was in grade 4 when the show premiered. The public's conception of the show, the way it changed, is also remarkable. When it came out, you did not want to mention on the school playground that you'd watched this new Star Trek show, because you were going to get beat up. It was like geek TV. But then I was in grade 10 in high school when All Good Things aired. So I was like, just shortly before I turned 16. And by that point, the perception was completely different. And it really happened between season 3 and 4 is when it took off. It actually, the best of both worlds became iconic. Yeah. And I think that's when a lot of people latched on to the new show. But I remember, especially the last 3 years that it was on, here, Star Trek The Next Generation was everywhere. You go into the dollar store, you'd see big Worf cutouts. Like, you could not get away from it. It had become a phenomenon, which it was weird thinking, just a few years before, it was this thing I was afraid to mention I was a fan of, because it was considered so uncool, to being like the biggest thing on TV. And then it's continued in synundication, up until this day. Well, so it's weird hearing what it was in the UK.
Well, Chris, from 88 until 1990, it had, to be fair, it had next to no profile at all. It was being released on video cassette, but obviously you've got to really want to watch Star Trek. It looked impressive to me because it was, like I say, it was with all the movies as a rental cassette. But most people still didn't really know it existed or what it was. Because you'd have to. For the average person who went into a video store, it was a choice to them: shall I rent Dirty Dancing or Big, or one of the huge movies from around that time, or shall I rent whatever this is? So it wasn't huge as such. It took 3 or 4 years before it became a success. But for those who had seen it, and looking at what Doctor Who at the time, at shows like Beauty and the Beast, fantasy and science fiction were so out of vogue. That's why this seemed so massive. And so to find out years later that something that appeared to be so confident of it in itself, that was actually behind the scenes, was a complete and total disaster, the like of which that I've never heard recounted in any behind the scenes documentaries about a TV show before. So that disconnect between what I was receiving and what was actually happening was massive.
And as much as I'm sorry, just really quick, I was just going to say, and as much as everybody, as they did in this documentary, they focus on the immediate go-to focus is best of both worlds, best of both worlds, best of both worlds. I actually think, though, that for me, the kind of turning point where you could no longer deny, even if you were a Kirk Spock purist, where you could no longer deny that this series had quality that you had to pay attention to, was about halfway through this 3rd season with Yesterday's Enterprise, which was a key episode where the Enterprise B comes forward in time and everything shifts to an alternate reality that's got to be fixed. Yeah. That was so undeniably class and quality, Star Trek, that at that point you say, okay, I have to get off this hold. This is bad without Kirk and Spock anymore.
Well, it wasn't the original cast. They were bad mouth in this, wasn't they?
Well, DeForest Kelly's in Encounter at Farpoint, so whatever to say, he was okay with it.
Yeah.
I think Shatner even says, doesn't he? He's got he had a twinge when they said it was coming back, but without him.
I think he actually admits that he felt a certain kind of way about it. He felt, if nothing nothing desperately passionate or deep-seated hatred, but that he felt a pang that something that he was synonymous with was going on without him. And you can sort of see why. But it's just one of the strings to this that's so interesting to this documentary.
I was going to say, Dan, as well, one of the masterstrokes, and again, I'd say it goes to Michael Piller on this for the future of Next Generation is, and Patrick Stewart mentions in it, where when you get into season 1 and season 2 of Next Generation, Captain Picard is this almost invincible, stoic character that can't be touched. But, you know, Michael Piller and co, they softened that up. They made him vulnerable. And that really, really developed that character.
I'd seen that and I'd watched it, but I'd never heard it described in in such a way that was. I've heard it talked about before, but it's always been pretentious. Whereas this is a lot more simpler and relatable and provable, because it's what you saw. It's so simple, and it's as if when this show, on the evidence of this documentary, when this show got out from its own way and realised that it doesn't really matter that you're attached to a big brand, that you've got a group of actors, a group of characters. Your job is mostly predominantly to entertain the people who are watching, wherever they are watching. Make sure you hold their attention, and ideally go somewhere creative for as long as you've got it. So when it started to embrace that, that's when the stars started to align. And the story that they talk about in this, which again I'd seen in print and I'd heard spoken about before, was the moment where the news team went to the set of The Next Generation during season 2, and they wanted to do a news piece and a weather report from the bridge of the Enterprise, and they wanted to lark about basically, and Patrick Stewart just didn't want them to do that in his place of work, and to break the spell that they were working so hard to create. And I thought, hearing him talking about it, and he talks about it with a smile on his face. I don't think it's, because how I've seen it spoken about before was that Patrick Stewart was just like being really pompous and unreasonable. But the way he explains it in this, it's like, no, I'd do exactly the same if you've got a job to do. And you know, so although this is a very, very funny documentary, I think it humanizes the whole thing, everybody involved, and it underlines, I should say, the truth that we know only too well now, 10 years since this documentary came out, that these TV shows and movies and these people are no different to any other workplace, any other group of colleagues. The things that they fall out about, that they find unacceptable, are the same as the people you would find working, a team of people working the local Greggs. They're just people, actors. They're not higher beings of any kind. They've got to put food on the table. They ideally want to have a good time if they can and be stretched. And so I think that's the real gift of a documentary like this. It can dispel that sense of sort of something lofty happening.
And I think when you watch the documentary as well, Dan, one thing that I've always taken from it is, you know, if this hadn't have worked, I don't think we would have ever got another Star Trek series.
Probably not.
You know, it could have gone completely the other way. So whether you like Kurtzman era or not, it's because of this eventually.
There's nothing to do with this. Yeah,
I'd absolutely.
Yeah, I know, but it led the way, because if you know, with that, you wouldn't have. It
also proves as well. It also proves as well that Kurtzman, I mean, there might be a cap on it, but he can continue making crap as long as he likes. But sooner or later, he won't be anywhere near this franchise, and somebody could just as easily come to it and reach into the core of it and pull out something which is like this again. It's not. I think that's why that hope that you were talking about in the first half of the show, Chris, when Picard airs season 3, that's probably why that flicker of hope will always remain with us, because Star Trek can actually be reinvented and pretty easily, really. I think Metalis proved that. The fact that it was a third season of something is sort of by the by. It might as well have been Well, it was proof of concept that this show can be saved just as easily as it was damaged. This universe.
It'll take a lot, but I think the situation now is different than it was by the time we got to the Next Generation season 3, because the first 2 seasons had such a low profile. It wasn't on a network. It wasn't syndicated. Most people didn't even know it existed. Whereas and again, that was only 2 seasons. We're now 7.5, almost 8 years into Kurtzman Trek, not to mention the movies. So there's a lot more to overcome now. Like, we don't have just 2 seasons. We have multiple seasons, multiple series of absolute trash to overcome. And they have to convince, basically, if they do turn it around, they have to get Star Trek fans to want to watch it in the first place, to give it a second chance. So I think the mountain that the franchise has to climb now is a lot bigger than it had to back in 1989. I still say, Star Trek is one of those franchises I think can be saved, whereas I can't say the same for Star Wars or that British show. I won't mention my name. I think Star Trek, just inbuilt within the show, I think it can come back, but it needs the right people. I think Terry Matalas could bring it back, but I think in order to bring it back, you have to stop and cancel and just get rid of everything you're doing right now. Yeah. Like that whole universe.
Yeah, total clean house.
And never see it again. Give it like 1 to 2 years of no Star Trek where they can work on, bringing back real Star Trek. Ideally, it'd be 5 to 10, but we're getting older, so I don't say that anymore because we'll be old. So, it's not impossible, but it is a much bigger challenge now.
Yeah, I will say regarding this documentary, I would absolutely love to see the probably 15 to 20 hours of raw footage, like all the complete interviews that he did with all of these people that he had to boil down into an hour. I would love to see all of that.
That's the big shame.
The actual behind the scenes stuff, or like cutting room floor segments of what was going on the set.
I think that's the big shame of this, the fact that it is only 60 minutes. You do get that feeling. I would have loved to have listened to Dinah Muldaur speak for far longer. I think they get 2 sentences out of her, which is such a shame, because I'd never heard her speak before, John.
No, and personally for me, I liked her character in season 2. I thought they were clearly trying to riff off, making her the new McCoy. I thought she had some good stories, and she was one that would stand up to Picard. But, it sounds like they, from what she said and what they said, they never made her feel welcome when she turned up on set. So he, she was quite happy not for the contract to be renewed. So, she's a decent actor, and she's been in a few things over the years, so it's not like she was rubbish. She did.
Are you talking about? Sorry, John. Are you talking about the woman that replaced Gates?
Yeah, Diana.
For season 2.
Yeah, because she's a veteran TV actress.
Yeah, she was in LA Law.
Yeah.
The first time I saw her, I don't think she would even discuss Star Trek for years after. The first time I remember seeing her even talk about her time was when the season 2 DVD set came out in 2002. So that's for 13 years, I don't think she would speak of it. I think for her was like, don't bring that up. I do not think she enjoyed her time on that show, to put it mildly. And you can see why watching the documentary.
Yeah.
Lord Thoth says here in the live chat on YouTube, I was a jock in high school in the 80s and hid my nerddom. He was a hockey player. Your secret is safe with us, Lord Thoth. PD Rich says, I was a total cultist in the geeky way. Mr. Warfire, says Stephen Braddock.
You're right, Dan, about the VHSs that came out at that time. The 2. Hello, Wendy. At the time, I watched both. I watched the VHSs before I watched BBC Two when it was on BBC Two.
Yeah,
it's strange, wasn't it? I think it was a whole year before it came on the BBC, wasn't it?
Yeah,
2 years. 2 years. Wow.
They still did it with DS9, because I remember us going as a family and renting DS9 and bringing it home from the video shop. So
My last question to you about this guys, is about Gene Roddenberry himself. The man's been dead for 33 years. Not a great deal of harm can be done to him, not at all to him personally or to his body of work, I think. But when you watch programs like this, or when you read interviews, what does it affect the way you view this man? I certainly never particularly considered him a visionary as such, but I did have him as a kind of revered figure. The fact that he had so many demons, as you say, John, he was going in and out of rehab practically on a weekly basis. This man, he didn't just have flaws; he was a wreck of a man. So
that was like me after watching
documentary.
Discovery season 2.
So watching this documentary, does it take too much shine off him, or is it so far in the past now that it's inconsequential? We can just sort of laugh about it and be informed by it on a human level as well.
I think for me, Dan, growing up, I knew who Gene Roddenberry was, but I didn't revere Gene Roddenberry. I think for me, the ones that I revered were Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, and then the Next Generation characters. That's what I focused on, and I think now I'm glad he wasn't around during the social media era, because I think that would have been a lot worse for him and for fandom personally. I think at the time he was loved by fans at the conventions, wasn't he? And I think he had a lot of demons, but he was a very, very good writer. What was he? He's a World War II fighter pilot, was a police officer. And this is what I think we lack now. We had people that were good, became good writers because of their lived experience back then. Now they can't even hold a candle to people like Gene Roddenberry. And
I suppose, John, in all fairness, I wouldn't want to paint it out as if this documentary makes it out that it was all Roddenberry's fault. It wasn't, was it? It's the people who reinstalled him and who managed him so it wasn't just him. It's just that he's such a larger than life character.
I think they even admitted in the documentary, Dan, they said that they were initially going to try and go forward with doing a new series without Roddenberry, but they said it would have been suicide because the fans wouldn't have been on board with Roddenberry.
Well, essentially they did.
I think, well, no, they brought him in because I think at the time, I'm pretty sure he leaked it at a convention as well, and that he wasn't going to be involved, or it might have been one of the movies, and it caused a massive uproar. So they had to bring him into it, just because they said you couldn't do Star Trek at the time without the name Gene Roddenberry associated with it.
We're out. We're not
executive producer. For the rest, he died halfway through season 5, and they even kept his name on as executive producer until the end of that season. Then he's taken off for season 6. So even though you could tell it was like the original series, he had very little involvement with season 3, but his name was still on there. Same thing with the Next Generation. He was basically executive producer in name only by season 3 and 4 and the first little bit of 5.
Interesting. Yeah.
You can't wait to watch it now, Ian, can you? You can't wait.
I'll definitely watch it. It sounds very interesting.
It's very entertaining.
All right.
Yeah.
It's a shame, really, because, again, I would say he's just like George Lucas. They came up with this great concept, but ultimately they were bad for those concepts.
And eventually, similar as well, they both had their concepts stolen from them. Gene Roddenberry didn't live to see what happened to Star Trek starting in 2017. Unfortunately, George Lucas was around to see what Disney did to Star Wars with his hand-picked successor. So there's a lot of similarities here.
Ian, this is the only documentary you'll ever see where one of the descriptors about one of the women that's interviewed is secretary / mistress.
Oh, no.
yeah.
No.
And I would also just finish my point on as well. I would say with I've said this before about current era of writing and writing rooms to that era and production. They had major issues going on at the time, but it just shows once that all settled down, there were still issues going on after that, I have no doubt, but it shows you've got to have people with different thoughts and ideas within your writing room, because that's how great shows get created and made. You know, the current eras of Hollywood, everyone thinks the same. So, you know, you don't have that clash that creates something great. And I think that's one of the big problems at the moment as well.
There was a lot of clashing involved with Star Trek The Next Generation throughout its first 2 seasons on the evidence of Chaos on the Bridge. You can still watch this. I think it's still streaming in various places, but they do move it around.
It's on Tubi. Although one thing that I noticed too is behind this. If you look at the beginning, it's got the Shout Factory logo. And this is around 2015. Shout Factory, which owns Scream Factory. It's one of the
this is what it's on.
That
is part of the Captain's collection. It's a collection of other various documentaries, and Chaos on the Bridge is one of the 4 documentaries.
Is that region 3?
It's on, and it is Shout, Chris. It is Shout Factory.
That was 2014, and that's when every release they would do some of the best documentaries you've ever seen.
I don't know if it's region 3.
Might be.
Shout Factory, probably not. It's I think it's like 5% of their releases are region 3, and it's never advertised.
I can check it out.
Do you know what? The one thing that Star Trek has above every science fiction going, and nobody's able to top it, is the design of the Enterprise. That design is so unique.
Yep.
So one, you know, it's just that one design that none of the ships from Star Wars or any of the sci-fis are as good as that. It's so original, that design's unbelievable. I love it.
It's the movie version for me.
Yeah,
and no, in fact, it's actually upside down. It's the original design is the Enterprise upside down, and that's just how they literally looked at the drawing the wrong way up. But yeah, it's awesome.
It's terrific. Yeah, absolutely terrific.
Yeah. Go and seek out Chaos on the Bridge. Physical media release as part of the Captain's Collection, according to Gary Akers there. Yep. And certainly in North America, I'll have to look and see if there's a British edition, because the one that I've got, it's from the high seas, but it is up there to stream somewhere, I would imagine, at some point. So when you do find it and give it a watch, let us know what you think in the comments section. Okay, I think we'll go with this.
I need you to stop staring at me like that.
Marry me.
I'd be staring too.
Absolutely awesome. So engrossed has the astronaut been, he hasn't touched his pizza and barely got the froth off that beer. There, he's been as engrossed as we have in our conversation. Our Star Trek special here for first time we've talked about Star Trek in a little while, largely because there's not a great deal to talk about that doesn't wind us the fuck up, is there? But as we're heading closer to Christmas, and as Star Trek kind of splutters into life every now and again, I think we thought it was time to revisit it and the final frontier. But let us know what you think of it all, your memories of watching Star Trek whenever you did, whether it was the 80s, could have been the 70s or the 60s or the 90s, the heyday where there was more Trek than you could possibly imagine in the 1990s. Maybe you are a Discovery fan. Maybe we found you at long last. Let us know in the comments section, by all means, what you like about that bloody awful show. Next time on the Spacebook Live, hopefully we should have the very first trailer of 2025's Superman by James Gunn. That's due in a matter of days. I can't wait, he says tentatively, but this is our cue to fly ourselves. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your company.
Cheers. Absolutely.
No worries.
Another rouser. This has been episode 99. So for the people out there who are more numerically advanced, that means the next one is number 100 of the Spacebook Live. Who'd have thought it? We're going to rope in a few people next time that you haven't seen for a while. There'll be a few guests here for a episode 100 party. Not quite sure what we're going to be talking about next, but for the first word on that, make sure you follow us on the old social medias. Chris, where can people find you on social media? And tell us about this video you just dropped. Tease us about what people can expect if they head over to Bowles Trek and press play.
If you head over to Bowles Trek and press play, you'll find somebody yelling about that British show, which I will not mention by name, and basically just making fun of a non-event this coming Christmas. My first video in about 6 months. Please watch it because YouTube has buried it, but YouTube hates me. Although I do at the end, I do plug this podcast, so I think you got maybe 6 subs. But yeah, so
cheers, buddy.
I might. There'll probably be more. I will review what I'm going to call the train wreck on Christmas Day.
The penny's only just dropped what you're talking about. I thought, why isn't he mentioning it by name? And then I just realised.
No. I don't. This is my happy show. I don't mention that show on this show because yeah. So there's that. So follow me on the X and follow me on Cultivated Media if you want to hear about horror things. And so that's me. Yay!
And thank you, Chris, and thank you, Frank. Again, it's good to see you too,
Frank, mate. Frank might be back next week, and we'll see. But I do have a funny hockey themed ad for next week before I get into some really dark stuff.
Somebody's getting a puck in the face.
Gary, thanks for coming on, mate. Particularly again with another amazing cap.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's the theme. I kind of
Star Trek,
and then happy Christmas, everybody. I got my Trek.
Way! Marvelous.
You can see me on, occasionally here on the Spacebook. I'm also on Sci-Fi Chronicles, where 2 other people who shan't be named try to steal my thunder.
No,
but I'm not gonna go into sordid details. That's always a lot of fun. So there you go.
Marvelous stuff. Speaking of Sci-Fi Chronicles, John, you might know something about that. What's going on the Sci-Fi Chronicles the next week or so?
Yeah, so it's a YouTube channel I've got, and Mr. Diaz, the Mega Geek, and Retro Doc have joined me. We're doing reviews of movies and TV shows from the past.
It's not me.
Reviews of classic Doctor Who.
Fake. It's deep fake.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I hired somebody. You're too busy doing your stunts for Rebecca Gold.
You've got Sam Wetwer in to wear a prosthetic Ian
Diaz. Yeah. So I'm on there, and that's at Sci-Fi Chronicles 79 on YouTube.
Every episode features something different that Ian is either drinking or eating.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that sounds a lot like the real Ian David Diaz to me, I have to say, buddy. You're not convincing me at all.
And we've just put out Close Encounters of the Third Kind review, which was good fun. So that's that. So and when I'm not on here in Type 40. So thanks for having me, Dan. It's been great fun again.
Type 40. It'll come back to me.
Come back to me,
yes, so that's the 3. Yes, that's Ian. Ian, you were here. You were here later. I know it's probably because you've been like a coiled spring out on location somewhere. So plug what you've been doing. And
soon a teaser trailer is going to come out on Rebecca Gold. So I'm hoping to complete it next year. I'm hoping this teaser trailer will entice people to go to an Indiegogo campaign that I'm going to be forming next year. So once it comes out, it's not very long. It's only 1 minute and 5 seconds, whatever. But it's a good teaser trailer. So that'll be coming out probably end of next week or the week after.
Oh, lovely.
Look
forward to that.
Yeah.
Bit of an early Christmas present for people, and we'll make sure that all the links are in the description here too. And I think the channel is connected to the channel. Oh, is that type? That could be the Type 40 one. Is it?
I don't know.
I'll have to do a bit of housekeeping here as well, make sure it's all connected and all working, all above board. Yes, I'm glad you could make it after all, Ian. And we'll catch up again soon. I've no doubt you can find me on Instagram and X as the Spacebook. I'm wheezing and groaning, ranting and raving about all things geeky, inside and outside of the TARDIS. People are always amazed when they find out that I can talk about something else other than Doctor Who. But no, here I am. Somebody on X earlier on was saying you should watch something else. Basically, I said, well, I do now and again. You can't expect miracles. So you can find me on X mostly. I'm Instagram. I always say Instagram, don't I? I've actually been thinking about getting rid of Instagram. I simply can't figure it out. But I'm going to give it one last push, one last try. And you can help me if you like by connecting with me over on there and encouraging me, spurring me on there, like the kid is about to go for his 12th driving test. That's how you got to look at it. Take pity on me over on Instagram there. Big shout out to the rabbi from another planet who was a poorly soldier this evening. I know he really wanted to come on, but he couldn't make it. He's Tom and Dick. The last time he came on, he actually had been Tom and Dick earlier and told us all about it in explicit detail. So maybe we should count ourselves lucky that we were spared the gory details this time. But you can find Safila Betkin, the rabbi from another planet, on YouTube. Of course you can, everybody. So go and subscribe to him and Matt Pott as well. Matt Pott's out on his birthday holiday too. Yes. I can't remember where he said he was going, but I hope he's having a bloody good time. Thank you for your company, gentlemen, and for all those comments there in the live chat as well. It's been a blinder, but it's time to swing off we go. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, or if you're watching this later on, catch up. Hope you had a good one. We'll see you for the next one, number 100, where we'll be covering more of all of out there entertainment. See you next time. Bye bye.
See ya. Bye.